I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Happy New Year. Yes, of course, the first morning glory of 2025. Hope you're well. Hope you had a fantastic time last night. So many messages coming in. Dave Berg, good morning to you. Waistcoat, he says, question mark. Yes, waistcoat response. Thanks ever so much for all your messages this morning. Lots going on in the papers. We'll go through all of that. This morning, also, have you actually thought about the new year? Do you have New Year's resolutions? Have you written them down, or have you just given up already? How was your night last night? Get in touch, let me know your thoughts on everything that transpired. We'll talk also about the fireworks here in London. Thank goodness they went ahead. I've seen some of it. It looks absolutely amazing. However, there were some rather overt political messages in there as well. We'll talk about that as well a little later on. But I don't know why he's here. He's completely bonkers. But Theo Usherwood joins me this morning as my friend. Good morning.
Very good morning to you, David. Lovely to be here.
Well, how's your new year?
It's great, 2025. Looking up. I thought the fireworks last night were absolutely fantastic in London, and I thought they compared very well to Paris and indeed other parts of the world. So I saw what they did in Dubai with the Burj Khalifa. Sydney the Opera House always looks fantastic.
I thought Sydney was fantastic.
But I thought actually we managed to pull off a great fireworks display. But make no mistake, it was a little bit political from Sadiq Khan.
Come on then, tell us why it was political.
Well, you had some speech. They introduced lasers. He promised something different. So there was some lasers, and then there was some speech interwoven with it, where he talked about London will always be a place that's welcome, or something. It wasn't his voice, but a voice that came over the top, said London is a place that will always be welcome to everyone. Of course, it's a city that's always welcome to everyone. It's a fantastic city, but I think they also played Things Will Only Get Better by D-Ream, which is, of course, the new Labour anthem from 1997.
You can't get more overtly political than that, can you?
Well, no, you know, it's within his right to do so, I suppose. I mean, he's the Mayor of London and he's in charge ultimately of the fireworks display, and he's gone for it. But you'd have thought that actually, you know, if you're positioning London, it doesn't really matter you know, the stripes, the political stripes of the you know, the Mayor of London. You know, these fireworks now for New Year's have become an advert for the city. So I don't think necessarily this isn't just about those who gather on the side of the River Thames or outside the Opera House. This is about saying London is a fantastic international city. Come to London, come to Dubai, come to Sydney, whatever. There's a competition. And I don't think you necessarily need to do anything that's political to say, well, this is London with a Labour mayor. I don't think your tourists who are thinking about where to have their summer holidays or your investors necessarily want to worry about that. They just want to see a fantastic city. So that's just you know.
I mean, maybe I've got this wrong, but under Boris Johnson, I don't think it was overtly political.
No.
He talked about Whiff Waff coming home. I'll never forget that, of course, in his bid for the Olympics, or when we got the Olympics.
But that's not political, is it, just to want the Olympics to come to this city? Because that's something that, regardless, everybody wants.
Well, let's have a look at a clip. We've put together a couple of what we think are overtly political messages that were in that ceremony in the firework display last night. So welcoming in 2025.
When skies are grey, hope is the way. In London, everyone is different. But that means anyone can fit in. I think she must be right. Because although I don't look like anyone else, I really do feel at home. Happy New Year. Love from Paddington.
Oh, who doesn't love Paddington? Though?
Everyone loves
But
him.
I mean, there is a message there. I don't look like everyone else. In London, anyone can fit in. I mean, it's a great message in many ways. Are we overthinking this?
Yeah, look, I don't think... on a scale of 1 to 10, was it political? I'd put it down as a 4. I'm just making a note that it was political. I think you're right to say, I don't think, you know, it wasn't, you know, there wasn't any, it wasn't a major sin in the way it was done. I'm just, you know, I'm making as an aside, I guess, that, you know, there were some, as you played there, the song by D-Ream, and of course,
I mean,
that's a song that everybody associates.
I think that's a step too far.
That's a song that everybody associates with Labour. But you know, he's just got his gong. He's Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London.
He's got one eye on the top job, hasn't he? He's got his little contact book out.
The way I read it, David, if I'm honest with you, was I saw him getting a gong as that's it. He's reached. From my understanding, I saw it as Sadiq Khan has reached the very top of his career as the Mayor of London. Of course, there had
accepted by the establishment.
There had been. You know, he's done 3 terms. He can't really. I don't think he would want to do a 4th term. And then, so you then have to look ahead as to could he move into Keir Starmer's cabinet position? It's ironic, I think, that actually the only person to move across from the Mayor of London's team to Keir Starmer's cabinet is one of his deputies in Heidi Alexander. I don't think that was how the script writers quite had it in Sadiq Khan's household. But that actually, I don't, you know, given where the Labour government is right now, I don't think holding a sort of mid-level cabinet position for Sadiq Khan versus being a Mayor of London actually holds the appeal. And I would have thought that looking at his, you know, having accepted this gong, he'll probably look to go and do something around the climate, city management, maybe do something in academia.
A lucrative
business.
Speaking circuit.
Maybe not necessarily even lucrative, but something I think that comes with a certain cachet.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll want to make some money as well, but something that comes with a certain cachet of position that works internationally as well. I think that moment for Sadiq Khan has gone, and that's not necessarily to blame Sadiq Khan, but given how bad things have been for Labour in the last 6 months, the allure of central government, of Westminster, is not quite the same as it might have been.
By the way, also, it was an anniversary yesterday, a birthday party for someone else.
Oh, cool.
The London Eye.
Oh. 25
years old. Incredible. I remember I remember the London Eye going up. So what a way to celebrate your birthday. So let's move on and talk about the New Year's messages. Now, Keir Starmer, this is all over the papers, actually. The front page of the Daily Mirror this morning, if you are just waking up, my promise for 2025. The Prime Minister talked about Victory in Europe Day in May, victory over Japan, VE and VJ Day on the 8th of May, as a moment for the country to come together to do that generation proud. He majored a lot on that. He also talked about people struggling with dealing with everyday life at the moment, the fact that things are very difficult. He tried to paint a very upbeat and optimistic vision of where he is taking this country. Let's have a look at his speech.
Till you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you. A fight for change that will define this year, next year, and indeed every waking hour of this government. We have a clear plan for change. 1.5 million new homes, restoring the dream of home ownership. Children starting school ready to learn. A more secure energy system. Waiting lists cut dramatically. Immigration reduced. Neighbourhood police tackling antisocial behaviour in every community, and more cash in your pocket wherever you live.
He looks awful in that. That is the terribly framed piece of videography, as far as I can see. He doesn't look like he's in command, does he?
No. I think when I first actually read this, and it's on page 5 of the Daily Mirror, and there's just a failure to construct a really tightly woven narrative about what he wants to achieve, and it feels like it's almost been written by ChatGPT. And the key, you put into ChatGPT, I want to write a New Year's message where we need to build more homes, cut NHS waiting lists and cut immigration, and ta-da, this is what you end up with.
Yeah.
And I know the comparisons are somewhat unfair, and I understand that they are two men in two very different positions. But Nigel Farage's speech was, and it was at Blenheim Palace, and I did watch that.
We'll show that in a minute.
And you know, and I say this as a neutral, right? I say this as somebody who isn't here, and I'm not a member of a political party, but it was just, you know, I realise that Nigel Farage has the, you know, he has the benefit of being on the outside. He has the benefit of being, as we were discussing previously, the disruptor. He does not have to be accountable for what goes on in government. But it was just a far cleaner, far more constructive narrative about what he thinks is wrong and what he wants to make right. And it was just, in terms of the delivery, in terms of the intonation, in terms of the connection with the camera and the connection with the viewer and the story he created, because he did it at Blenheim Palace, the birthplace of Winston Churchill, it was just light years ahead of what the Prime Minister did and what he put forward in his New Year's message. And I just can't for the life of me understand why his team are not sitting down and looking at what Nigel Farage did at Blenheim Palace and looking at what they've produced and thinking, my God, we've got to up our game.
So just in terms of that, and that's why I said it was appalling videography, he's sitting down, he's not in control, he's not in command, he's got a baggy shirt on then, he looks like a dejected man. And as you say, when you actually look at the construction of all of that, there was no optimism, no hope, there was no vision. That, I think, was the problem with Starmer. Shall we move on, though, and we'll come back to all of this. I mean, it's interesting, actually, this morning in the front page of the Times, a poll gives Starmer a New Year headache. I mean, he's going to not like these headlines this morning. Most voters see Labour as incompetent, dishonest and unsuccessful, and think Starmer will fail at all 6 of his milestones. This is new polling for YouGov. I mean, he has talked about, what does he say? He uses all those same mantras. He talks about working people, a plan for change. He says things like, so I want to be clear. He uses the same phrases over and over again, and people are tired of it.
But when you do that, you break the connection between yourself and the viewer. And you understand, it's quite interesting talking to you about this because, David, you understand television, right? You understand what it is to have that link between you as the person who is trying to convey a message and the person you want to hear that message. And it's so important that you have that connection. And for some people, it comes very easily, granted. And when it doesn't come very easily, you just have to work and work and work until you get it right, because otherwise there is simply no point, because you might as well put a Dalek in the desk at number 10 and say, well, you deliver the message.
Well, let's juxtapose that. I was going to show you Kemi Badenoch's speech, but let's go to Nigel Farage first, because you mentioned this at Blenheim Palace, as you say, the birthplace of Winston Churchill. The one thing, and I would say this, and I have watched him very closely over many, many years, Nigel Farage has an amazing gift of communication. He speaks from the heart. He has belief. One of the things that I've noticed, and I've been around the country with him many, many, many times, he has this incredible capacity to connect with people from all walks of life. Yeah. And that is very unusual for a politician. He also seems to understand what people are going through and the hardships they face. Let's have a look at what Nigel said.
The fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people, and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of. It was also because I'd fought so hard and so long for us to get back our independence, Brexit, taking back control of our own lives, and to see that completely squandered by a Conservative Party who frankly never believed in it, but used it for electoral advantage in 2019.
So the really interesting thing watching that, he's talking with you.
Yes.
Starmer is
but he's talking in normal sentences as well.
Starmer is talking at you.
Yeah, and he's talking in normal sentences. He's talking as if you could be sat there and that is how you would talk. Yeah. If I went and had a cup of coffee and you walked in downstairs and you said, I know, into the canteen and said, Theo, I've got a really important message to tell you. That's how you would talk to me. You would not say, well, let me be clear. Let me be clear, Theo Usherwood. There are 2 sugars in that cup of tea. Yeah. You just wouldn't do that.
No.
And you wouldn't set out your manifesto for the next 3 hours on this show in sort of bullet points. And I feel like I might be labouring the point a bit, but it is important that Keir Starmer manages this connection, because if you gets this connection right, because if he gets this connection right...
But I don't think he can.
Well,
because I don't think
it's
in
practice.
Well, I don't think it's in his DNA, and I think you have to be a... Right. I'm not saying you should be a showman, but I do think you need to have belief.
I think this is a Prime Minister who works very hard. I don't doubt that he actually wants the best for this country, but the question is, can he...
You see, I don't even believe that.
Well, I think certainly he works very hard, and yes, I do think he wants the best for this country, but he's got to be able to deliver, because at the moment he's not delivering. He's failing to get across. He's failing to, turn this country around. If you look at the measures he's taken, he's put the cart before the horse, because he's decided to go with the tax rises first. And of course, we know that economic growth comes when businesses feel incentivised to take on more staff, to expand their operations, and that will lead into higher tax receipts into the Treasury, which can then be spent on public services. But rather than try and enhance that or support that, he's decided to go ahead and tax it with those increases in national insurance contributions. That's something I think many businesses fundamentally disagree with that approach. But ultimately, he's not going to succeed if the substance of what he is trying to do proves to be, to fail. And I think it's going to be very interesting in juxtaposition with Donald Trump in the White House on January the 20th and the measures that he takes versus the measures that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves has taken. But I also think if he can't get the communication with the British public right, then I think he's in real trouble as well. And going by that message, he's 6 months in now. You make those kind of mistakes in terms of delivery in your first few months of opposition, not in your first few months of government.
I have to move on, but also just in terms of the framing of that. He's not wearing a tie. He's not being a statesman. Nigel Farage standing up.
Sit up.
Exactly. Nigel Farage standing up. Look at the difference. So here you've got a chap who looks like, he's in the doctor's waiting room pretty much, in a oversized shirt there with absolutely not exuding any kind of confidence or authority, actually. That's what's missing from that. Nigel Farage standing up at Blenheim Palace, addressing the nation, saying, look, it's awful, this is where we... Look, they're poles apart, just in terms of the way they're framed. Let's look at Kemi Badenoch, if we can, as well. She also gave a New Year's message, obviously a difficult time for the Conservative Party, but this is what she said.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently.
I mean, well composed. She's standing up. She looks authoritative, friendly. I like the way she spoke with a smile.
Yes, but it lacked the production of what did Reform did at Blenheim Palace. Because if you look at the way that Farage stands with the picture to the, I don't know the picture, it's blurred, but it looks like some sort of family portrait to the right of him, and then the window on the left-hand side of him. The whole composition of the picture, and I think also the quality of the way it's being produced, it's much better. And I'd also note that it's not necessarily about... It's about, you talk about confidence. Farage, when I watched that, it looked like he did it in one take.
He did.
He did it in one hit. And he was prepared to swallow the stumbles when he didn't quite get it right, and actually use those stumbles to make it sound genuine. That, of course, we don't always speak with complete fluency, and that's okay. That's how people speak.
So there is one other thing that people need to understand about Nigel Farage. He's obsessed with British history and the role of Britain in the world. And none of that is by coincidence. So he will understand the gravitas of being in that building, what it means, rebuilding of the country and so on. So, Theo, thanks ever so much for the moment. Let me throw that out to you, if I may. So, just looking at what Keir Starmer said, he said this is a year of rebuilding. He says he can rebuild the United Kingdom. He says he can rebuild Britain. Do you think Keir Starmer can actually rebuild Britain this year in 2025? The number 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can also text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. After the break, we'll continue with this morning's front pages and some of the other big stories making the news on this very first day of the new year. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 626, New Year's Day. Hello, how are you feeling this morning? One eye open, looking out of the duvet. Very good morning to you. Thanks ever so much for your company this morning. I'm David Paul, joined by Theo Usherwood, who's gamely here on New Year's Day. So fantastic. Congratulations. Yeah. Oh, well done you. Thank you. We're very grateful that you are here. Lots of messages coming in. Hi, David and Theo. Happy New Year. No, Starmer cannot rebuild Britain. He hasn't got support of the British people. Christina, thank you very much for that. Sharon Miller, good morning to you. Happy New Year. Nigel Farage is the man to lead the UK for sure. I love his New Year's speech, the best. I've heard it's been the best for years. Thank you very much, Sharon. Also, a voice note from Christopher this morning. Yes, please send in your voice notes. Very good morning to you, Christopher.
Good morning, David. Happy New Year to you, Theo, and the whole team. Looking forward to the show.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you very much. Lots of other... I mean, Keir Starmer, we were just talking about the fact that he looked dishevelled. He wasn't really prepared. He looked like he'd sat down. The intern had said, right, come on, Prime Minister, let's make a message. It was cobbled together. Obviously, New Year, new intentions, his list of New Year's resolutions. He is not going to like the front pages this morning. Let's look at the front page of the Daily Mail. So much for cutting our energy bills. This is obviously the energy price cap going up yet again. And here we are, Ed Miliband, trying to persuade all of us that actually the push for renewable energy will make us all so much richer and it will cut £300 off our energy bills. And that is not true.
No, and Labour ministers now won't say it in the House of Commons. Because, of course, if you say it in the House of Commons and it's not true, then you have to come back to the House of Commons and you have to correct the record. It's been some months since that claim has been said at the dispatch box by a Labour minister. And, of course, the argument from Labour is that by building the likes of onshore wind and wind farms and, of course, other sources of renewable energy, it will be possible to cut our energy bills. But that's not going to happen for some time. And we see, of course, that the energy price cap is going up by another 1.2%. It's likely to go up in April by another £50, and that's on top of the 10.2% increase in the energy price cap that happened in October. Add it all together alongside the decision to remove the winter fuel allowance from all but the very poorest pensioners, and you're looking at a £500 hit for those over 60, those who were entitled to the winter fuel allowance, to their energy bills this winter. It's painful.
It is extremely painful, and of course, I don't really understand how they can continue to try to pull the wool over people's eyes to say that actually they have a plan, energy bills will come down, they're going to restructure the national grid. That means putting pylons across arable countryside. That is not going to play well either. Why don't we do what Trump is doing, which is to say we need to drill, we need to actually move to SMRs. There's a great piece about the role of British engineering rolling out those SMRs.
Yeah, so an SMR, sorry.
A small modular reactor, so small nuclear reactors.
Yes, on the nuclear side, this was the direction the Conservatives wanted to go. And in fact, it was, and they wanted to go that, in terms of nuclear reactors back in 2010, but they were blocked by Nick Clegg and the Liberal Democrats when in coalition. When it comes to fracking, this was something that also Boris Johnson tried to do.
Yeah.
And they tried it over many years. Compared to the United States, we just don't have the space. So when you try to frack, there are changes to the water table. You do have many earthquakes, and because we don't, in the United States, I don't know if you've ever done a road trip across the United States. You literally could drive for miles and miles and miles, and there's like one house.
Yes,
they've got the space to frack. But in this country, when they've tried to do it, communities have thrown their arms up and said, well, we can't. Housing. People have thrown their arms up and said we can't have that on our back door. But to your point about nuclear, absolutely. But of all these things take take time to get going, and it's no good just saying...
But we've had time.
Yes,
there is no kind of concerted blueprint. No one has come together. We don't have a roadmap to where we're going. I mentioned this the other day. I happened to go on Boxing Day for a walk around Sizewell, where there are 2 nuclear power stations. It is a beautiful part of the country, but there we are. We've got a Magnox power station which has been decommissioned, a PWR reactor I remember being built in my lifetime, which looks in a bit of a sorry state because it's getting old like me, and then we haven't actually built Sizewell C yet, still.
Yes, and what's interesting also is there's a story on the front page of The Guardian. I know that many of your listeners won't be prone to reading The Guardian, but it makes the point, of course, that from today, the Russian energy state energy company Gazprom was expected to cut off its exports to Europe through Ukraine's pipelines. After a gas transit deal struck between the countries 5 years ago came to an end at midnight, just gone. And that's going to have a huge impact if we don't have Russian gas making its way through to Europe, and the knock-on impact it would have in this country, because, of course, we import a huge amount of our energy. But it's no good. You know, the problem with renewable energy is it relies on the weather being a particular way at any given time, and that's not, you know... the sun may not be shining, but a hospital still needs to turn the lights on and have the life support machines working. The wind may not be blowing, but if you're running a high energy usage company like in chemicals or in manufacturing, you need that energy come rain, wind or shine, and it doesn't always. And unless you turn to something like nuclear or you go back to fossil fuels, you're not going to get it.
And that
guaranteed.
And that is the case for nuclear power. It gives you the base load.
Yes.
And it is constant, and you can rely on it. So I'm just looking, actually. I mean, it's obviously very windy at the moment, but at this very moment in time, 85% is coming from renewables.
Yeah.
Which is very unusual, actually, because it's normally around 50%. Nuclear is providing about 25% of that. But just imagine if we'd invested in nuclear and we'd actually built those nuclear plants and the SMRs, those tinier reactors, we wouldn't be in this mess.
No, we'd be absolutely light years ahead of where we are now. And we wouldn't. And the really important thing about this is if we weren't relying on overseas energy sources, the reason we're in this financial difficulty, David, is we borrowed a trillion pounds for COVID. The economy stopped basically for it stopped for 3 months completely, and then it was sort of held back. So people weren't earning, they were having their income subsidised through furlough. Huge amounts of money pumped into the NHS to support the NHS. It cost this country a fortune, which is fine. We had to borrow huge amounts of money at low interest. But then what we had, of course, was the war in Ukraine, and as a result of that, we had inflation. In and of itself, not a problem. But then the interest rates were put up. And as a result, the cost of all of that debt accrued during COVID shot through the roof. And that's why there isn't the money that we would otherwise want for public services, and Keir Starmer would like for public services right now. We have to get away from this reliance on overseas energy, because that's why we're in this problem, because it was the high inflation, high interest rates that, of course, has meant that many families are really struggling at the moment, because high interest rates, they're paying more on their mortgages. And it's not just those who own homes that are affected by high interest rates. Renters are as well, because if suddenly a landlord who has a portfolio of 3 or 4 properties suddenly sees the cost of servicing, and most of those properties, in most cases, landlords are leveraged just like the rest of us, they have to then pay higher costs in terms of their mortgage costs, so then they have to pass those on to renters as well, their tenants as well. So that's why it's absolutely crucial that we get this right. And if you just put, we have to get away from this idea that somehow we need to sort of go backwards in terms of our energy usage. We want this economy to grow. We want to do well. We want industry. We want manufacturing.
I mean, that's a brilliant point, because over Christmas, of course, National Grid were very worried about actually having enough power.
We need energy. We want this. We want this. We want lorries in central London delivering towels and fresh bed linen to hotels so that we can have tourists coming to this city and watching the fireworks. It's just basic stuff like that. I mean, I say that as a joke, but I went out in a previous life when I was reporting to a laundrette out in Dagenham in East London that does exactly that. It washes the towels and the bed linen for all of the swanky hotels. And when the energy prices went up, the guy was in tears.
Of course.
He was absolutely in bits because he just
But this is the disconnect. I have to go to a break, but this is the disconnect. I do not think the government understands those small businesses, those laundrettes, those people that are washing the bed linen, the towels for the swanky hotels. I just don't think they get it.
No.
I really don't. We'll take a break now. Keep all your messages coming in, please. So Keir Starmer says this is the year that things are going to change or thereabouts. He keeps talking about a plan for change. Your thoughts, please. Can Keir Starmer turn this around this year? 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. I'll leave you with one quick message. Teresa says, David, I'm scared of Starmer and I'm scared of this government. I get emotional at what I fear for this country. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 6:38 on Wednesday, January. The first day of the new year. Pinched and punched for the first of the month. No returns. A very good morning to you. Hope your heads are all right. Wonderful fireworks in London last night. When I went to bed, I was really worried whether they would actually take place. But there you can see some pictures of what took place in London. A couple, as we were saying, Theo and I were talking about a couple of very political points being made by Sadiq Khan, using Things Can Only Get Better, the Labour anthem of 97 there. Also Paddington Bear being resurrected, being put into the wheel. But look, a fantastic sight for London, welcoming in a brand new year. Let's look through this morning's front pages, shall we? Whilst you're cowering underneath your duvets this morning, the front page of the Daily Mirror. Here we go. This is my promise for 2025. This is Keir Starmer's message. We talked about this. Keir Starmer looking very slovenly, in my humble opinion, there, with a very baggy, ill-fitting shirt. He doesn't seem to be very in command of his brief. His promise for 2025, he says he has talked exclusively accordingly to The Mirror. He says Keir Starmer will make 2025 a special year by honouring our greatest generation whose sacrifices helped win the Second World War. He talks about VE Day, VJ Day, the 80th anniversary on May the 8th. Just in terms of the way that this is being conveyed, he says, we understand that you're struggling with a very difficult economic situation. We'll get together, we'll actually amalgamate around each other, and that we will face down the year and we will turn things around. However, given all of that, the front page of The Times, their headline, Poll gives Starmer a New Year headache. This is quite interesting reading. Keir Starmer, as I was saying, acknowledges that many people in Britain find it hard to think about the future. And what the poll shows is that Labour has fallen behind the Conservative Party. When you look at the detail of this, people in this country are broadly pessimistic of the future. Now, we're only 6 months in to a new Labour government. In the detail, most voters see Labour as incompetent, dishonest, unsuccessful, and they think Starmer will fail on all 6 of the milestones he's set for his government. According to YouGov, this is the polling for The Times. When you ask voters, how many of you are actually optimistic about what the Labour government can achieve? It's a resounding 31%. And as I said, Keir Starmer promises that this battle to change Britain will define the year. I would say voters are already losing confidence and they're losing patience in the government. The front page of the Daily Telegraph. Again, this is something else the government has got wrong. The headline this morning, private schools to defy Treasury over fees. Now, as you know, VAT has been imposed on private schools as of today, and the government says that actually this won't affect, in terms of the schools, they won't pass on the entirety of that 20%. They say it will be about 10%. Well, when you dig into the detail here, it looks like the majority of those schools are passing on between 15 and 20%, showing that actually the Treasury has got this wrong yet again. We're also seeing pupils leaving private schools, going into the state system, and also the numbers that they are citing don't make any sense at all. We'll talk more about this at 8:30 with Stephen James, who's an award-winning teacher, but that's the headline this morning, private schools to defy Treasury over fees. Very quickly, I'll just mention this one in the Telegraph as well. Energy bills set to rise further in the new year. This is also about the energy price cap, which is going to go up, and that is also on the front page of the Daily Mail. So much for cutting our energy bills. Millions of householders facing an energy bill hike today have been told to prepare for a further rise in the spring. So the annual bill, the energy price cap essentially means it's the price per unit of electricity, but it means the average home will pay about £1,738. That's going to rise again in April to £1,785. And yet, of course, Ed Miliband says they will get behind this and they will reduce energy bills by £300. We shall see. I am not holding my breath. We'll take a break, then I'll take you through the rest of this morning's papers. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
I think there is a conversation to be had around the impact of social media because, you know, we see it everywhere, don't we? It's just insidious. It's people on the trains playing music out loud because they think no one else can hear it. It's this idea that they're all walking around in a bubble, people walking down the street staring at a screen and unable to have a conversation or a debate or meet a stranger or, you know, and it's affecting people in the workplace. And as an economy, we do need people to be healthy, happy and well and working.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning, Jennifer. Thank you for your message. Good morning, David and Theo. Happy New Year. David, you matched the set. You look lovely and bright. And Bushy Tail, thank you very much. Very kind. Very professional. Oh, very kind. Starmer is a disgrace. Nigel should be our next Prime Minister. His message was so real. It was real leadership material. Jennifer, thank you for that. Good morning. It says Sean in Gloucester. Good morning. Happy New Year, David. Firstly, I struggle to listen to Starmer, and when I try, it's just blah, blah, blah. My dad was a toolmaker, blah, blah. Lies, the lot of it. I didn't like him, and I knew Labour would be bad before the election. But they've really exceeded my expectations. They are now totally useless, and Kemi was mediocre. Farage looked like a statesman. He spoke clearly. He has a manner that people relate to. The next 4 years will be a long way to get this moronic Labour Party out. Sean in Gloucester, thank you very much. That's interesting that, again, Farage has a manner that you can relate to. I think that's what you meant, really.
Yeah, you can. He has that moment with the camera where you can relate to him. He speaks your language. He speaks. And it's not complicated. We're not talking like we're not reinventing the wheel here. This isn't rocket science. I haven't got like I don't need to sit down with like, you know, dozens of scientists and nuclear physicists to figure this out. But you know, he just manages to write a decent script, or his team writes him a decent script, which sounds like you.
Do you know what? He'd do it.
Do you think he's doing?
I do think he'll do it.
Yeah. And you write a decent script. You go through it. You make it sound as if it's something you would say to a friend of yours in the pub, and it would sound perfectly normal and not out of place at all. He's done that, and then he's just delivered it well, as if it is his own voice, and that's what's so important. So he owns that. He owns that moment.
No, just looking through that speech, there are passages in there that are so him that could only come from him. So I have no doubt he wrote it. Let's take a call. David is in Gloucestershire. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning, David and Theo. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too. What's on your mind?
Well, Starmer talks about change. It will change, but for the worse. I really do believe that. I believe by January, when the figures come out, we will officially be in a recession.
Yeah, of course, we're on recession watch as we speak. What did you think of his speech when you juxtapose it with Badenoch, when you look at Nigel Farage, for example?
Well, he always uses the same words.
Doesn't he? Yes.
All three words: stop the boat, for change, whatever it may be. And he talks with such authority, and you listen to me. And we hate it, absolutely hate it. And Farage comes from the heart. And I mean, as for Kemi, I'm afraid we were hoping she'd do something, but that argument with Nigel about reform figures, I mean, what a stupid argument to get involved in.
I would agree. And, of course, the thing is that essentially she said that Reform was making it all up. Of course, then Reform opened up the back end of that. It comes from Nation Builder, which is a platform where you put in details of everyone who has given pledges or money or said they're going to vote for the party. And, of course, they've seen the back end. So then it blew her out of the water.
Yeah. she really has blown it. You know, I think she has blown herself out of the water. I mean, she's really made a very, very silly mistake.
David,
I cannot stand Starmer. And I believe that Tony Blair is pulling the strings in the background.
Okay, so let me ask you the question I asked yesterday. Do you think Starmer will last much longer?
I hope not, but who is going to replace him? I mean, the only thing I can...
Rayner?
I really do hope, and this is my hope, and I know it's going to be horrible, but we do go into a horrible, horrible recession, and it blows the Labour Party out of the water, and it forces us into an election. But I know that's going to be horrible for the country at the time, but I think it could be for the best in the long run.
David, really good to talk to you. I wish you a very happy new year. It's an interesting point, isn't it? A full-blown recession, that would focus minds.
Yes, it would, but I don't think it will change the fundamentals that, of course, the Fixed Term Parliaments Act was scrapped, but there's no need for Keir Starmer
well, not with the majority they've got.
Not with the majority. There's no chance of a general election. In terms of the question about whether he's...
Well, you say that. What about the locals in May? Because let's just say they get trounced at the local elections. There will be lots of Labour MPs, new Labour MPs, very nervous, particularly in rural constituencies.
Yes, but the thing about new Labour MPs is that if you're not steeped in the ways of Westminster, that you can, it's easy for the party whips, if they can get, Starmer can get his whipping operation, and I'm sure they'll be working, since to make sure that actually the discipline within the party is quite good. And also, it's worth mentioning, of course, the mechanism to get rid of Labour leaders is much more difficult than it is to get rid of Conservative leaders. So when you have a leadership challenge, the person who is challenged has a right to stand in that contest. So if you think back when Owen Smith challenged Jeremy Corbyn for the leadership, and there was a leadership challenge, then there was a leadership race, and Jeremy Corbyn got to stand in that race to be leader of the Labour Party, and he won it and became leader of the Labour Party again. And so the mechanism is, there is a mechanism to get rid of Keir Starmer, but it could be fairly bloody if he decides that he doesn't want to go, and then there's a challenge to see who's, and he ends up in the race again. It's not as straightforward. I think we might have all become quite used to musical chairs within the Conservative Party. In the Labour Party, the rules are a little tighter.
They hold on to their chairs. The Daily Express, this is the front page of the Daily Express. Winter fuel pay victims suffer £500 bill rise. We were talking about this, the energy price cap going up. Pensioners stripped of winter fuel cash face being £500 worse off after today's energy bill rise. According to campaigners, of course, we talked about this. Theo mentioned the loss of the winter fuel payment as well as the first policy enacted by the Labour government. The Guardian, a surge in private dentist charges prices patients out of treatment. This is a huge scandal, actually. It's a national scandal. The amount they pay NHS dentists, many people can't get hold of an NHS dentist, so obviously reverting to private dentists. The private dentists, and they are private practices, so they can charge what they like, but patients are paying as much as £775 for root canal work and £435 to have a tooth out, £325 for a white filling, due to fees for common dental procedures soaring since 2022. As a medic myself, I actually think we need to invest in dental surgeries, because the link between poor dental work and your dental hygiene is linked to poor ill health, and actually we need to stop dividing them artificially.
And it's worth mentioning, of course, that this is the crisis in dentistry affects right across society. There was a story in the Times just before Christmas. Where it came out from figures from the government that a fifth of the armed forces weren't fit to fight.
Yes,
do you remember
that's right.
that?
I do.
And actually, it was James Heappey, the former armed forces minister, who then turned up and said, actually, it's probably down to the fact, and this is, a former minister, so he knows the inner workings of how the military personnel, what's going on. Turned around and said it's actually down to dentistry. That's what he thought it would have been down to, and that under the rules, military personnel have to have a dental appointment every 6 months, and if you don't have that dental appointment, then you're struck off the list which enables you to serve on the front line. And he was saying that actually, yeah, you could say there were complaints about some soldiers saying it was too hot and too cold and they couldn't fight if there was too much noise or whatever. But he was actually saying the fundamental problem with all of this was the fact that the basics weren't being done, particularly in the area of dentistry. It's very difficult to get an NHS dentist now. You do have to pay for NHS, and you only get it for free.
But one of the reasons, and I do need to carry on with the front pages, one of the reasons is the banding. It doesn't reflect the work.
No.
So the dentists don't get paid enough for what they do, and that is why the dentists are actually backing off NHS work and going back into private work.
And that's why people have to then go private and pay, you know, as much as £770 for a root canal.
Exactly. This is a really interesting story in the Eye. Kitchen revamped stone blamed for deadly lung disease. This is fascinating. Engineered stone, which is all the rage, as you know, when you're putting in a new kitchen. This is quartz, has soared in popularity, but it's actually been linked to silicosis. And they're talking about the workers who are cutting the quartz, but without adequate ventilation. So we're now seeing a rise in young men who are working with this stone getting silicosis, which can prove fatal. And there are some terrible examples of 2 young men who died as a result of that. The Sun front page, picture of Big Ben. Happy 2025, folks. Underneath, Hubby Roo year. Wayne Rooney yesterday bagged a new role for 2025 as a house husband after leaving his manager's job at Plymouth. Apparently, his exit comes as his wife Colleen plans a TV career after her successful stint on I'm a Celebrity. I like this quote. It's now Colleen's time to shine. The Daily Star, I always love a Star front page. Brian, why I punched a polar bear. The most incredible actor, Brian Blessed, reveals that he was actually, I think he was on a trek somewhere in the Arctic or something, Antarctic. Where was he? He was on a polar trek and the North Pole, and a big polar bear came up and woke him up, and then all his mates rushed out with guns and said, right, OK, we're going to shoot the polar bear, and he said, I'm not having any of that, and punched the polar bear on the nose, and he ran away.
And the polar bear survived. Well, that's important because this is an endangered species.
Well,
so if the polar bear ended up with a bruised nose rather than being shot thanks to Brian Blessed, good for Brian Blessed.
Well, I agree, and also no one messes with Brian Blessed, do they? I mean, he's quite something. It's fascinating. Do you think 2025, I mean, just in terms of what we've been talking about, those are the front pages, by the way, just in terms of that. I wonder what is going through Keir Starmer's mind when he hears us talking about this, when he sees the headlines in the newspapers, when he sees the numbers of people saying he is unfit for purpose, that people don't have confidence in this government. They feel this year is going to be a terrible year. We heard people, that the last caller, saying they hope there will be a recession because that will focus minds and therefore we might get rid of this Prime Minister. I mean, that must hurt.
Yes, I think it will hurt. I think he's got that ability, and we saw it in opposition, to put the blinkers on and to push through something. And as we saw in opposition, actually that was quite effective when it came to reforming the Labour Party. There were lots of people who said, the Labour Party can never find itself elected again after Jeremy Corbyn. Keir Starmer put the blinkers on, and he set his task to it, and he delivered it. The question is now, can he put the blinkers on and actually get through this particular crisis? And I think, given what it is to be in government compared to what it is to be in opposition, it's a different beast, and it is a different challenge on a whole new scale that I'm not sure, given what we've seen in the past 6 months, David, that the Labour government, and I include Keir Starmer, obviously as the Prime Minister, and his senior cabinet ministers, are quite prepared for. I think they made too many mistakes early on to demonstrate to your listeners, people tuning in today, to say, actually, you know, as we head into 2025, we can turn this oil tanker around.
Really good to see you. Thank you ever so much for coming in, Theo. Theo Usherwood, their political commentator. You're all sorted for the rest of the day. Little nap, are you?
Little nap, and then New Year's Day, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Isn't it?
Walk.
Exactly right. Well, I wish you a very happy New Year as well. Thank you ever so much for coming in. After the break, we're going to be talking more about the political roundup. I'll be joined by Matthew Torbett, ex-Labour advisor, to chew the cud. This is Morning Glory.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in on ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles that Biden...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This
Good morning to you, just after 7 o'clock on the first day of 2025. A very happy new year to you. I hope you had a wonderful time last night. I've no idea what you got up to. I wonder how your heads are this morning. Are you watching from the duvet with one eye open with a cold compress on your head? Well, if you are, I wish you a very happy 2025 and thank you very much indeed for watching this morning. Lots going on, as you can imagine, this morning. Of course, new year, new hope, new optimism. New Labour. That's what we were talking about, the New Year's celebrations in London last night. There are some pictures. I mean, really magnificent fireworks and the lighting show that was intertwined with that, of course. We were talking also about there were some overtly political messages. As I said, things can only get better. The 97 anthem, the Labour anthem, which was interwoven into the tapestry of that story last night. And, of course, Paddington Bear then made an appearance where he talks about anyone can be welcome in London. They were certainly paw prints of Sadiq Khan all over that particular ceremony last night, but thank goodness it did take place. I feel very sorry for those people in Edinburgh where Hogmanay was cancelled, where the celebrations or official celebrations were cancelled. Lots going on this morning as well. Of course, we've heard New Year messages from the Prime Minister, also from Kemi Badenoch. We've heard one from Nigel Farage as well. Keir Starmer has acknowledged that many people in Britain find it hard to think about the future. Now, there is a big problem for him, which is highlighted on the Times front page this morning, saying that actually the poll ratings for Labour are pretty diabolical. Keir Starmer says, though, this is a year of rebuilding. This is where we all come together, he says. This is where, I'll paraphrase, we make the country great again. Let's take a look at what the Prime Minister said in his New Year message to the country.
Till you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you. A fight for change that will define this year, next year, and indeed every waking hour of this government. We have a clear plan for change. 1.5 million new homes, restoring the dream of home ownership. Children starting school ready to learn. A more secure energy system. Waiting lists cut dramatically. Immigration reduced. Neighbourhood police tackling antisocial behaviour in every community. And more cash in your pocket wherever you live.
What do you think? Prime Ministerial? Slovenly? Badly dressed? Ill-fitting shirt? Not issuing and exuding confidence or leadership to the country? I am less than impressed by that. Glenn in Leeds has messaged in, Happy New Year, David. Starmer is trying to exert his Blair Cool Britannia circa 97 look and portray he is in charge and he has authority. But he looks like a supply geography teacher and he talks like an authoritarian clinging to power. This one will go down well with the public, I don't think. Glenn in Leeds, thanks very much for that. Lots of other messages. Stuart in Perthshire says, good morning, David and Theo, and Happy New Year. Yes, to you as well. I don't think Starmer will ever make a success of anything as Prime Minister because he doesn't love Britain and possibly despises the country. Everything about him is fake. I'm wondering if his wife actually puts him in a cupboard every night and plugs in his charger. Great start to the year on Talk, though, with Theo and yourself. Thank you very much. I mean, that is the key to this, isn't it? It's robotic. He is a robot. He's an automation. He doesn't seem to have any passion, any soul. And that's what Theo and I were talking about. There's no resonance. He doesn't have cut through. You don't kind of feel he is talking to you. He is talking at you. Let's juxtapose that with Kemi Badenoch, of course, the new leader of the Conservative Party. What do you make of her a New Year message?
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently.
Much more calm, assured, confident, smiley. What did you think of that? Let me know your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. Now, when you look at Keir Starmer's delivery, and as I said, he didn't even have a tie on, he wasn't standing up, he doesn't exude authority. Let's also look at that when you compare it with Nigel Farage. Now, he gave his address from Blenheim Palace, the birthplace of Winston Churchill, one of his all-time heroes. And let's have a look at what he said, and then your thoughts on that, please.
Fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of. It was also because I'd fought so hard and so long for us to get back our independence, Brexit, taking back control of our own lives, and to see that completely squandered by a Conservative Party who frankly never believed in it, but used it for electoral advantage in 2019.
And that's Nigel Farage there. Let me know your thoughts on all of those, please. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Joining me now, Matthew Talbot, ex-Labour advisor and political commentator. Good morning. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks very much. When you look at those 3 New Year messages, what do you think?
I think the one thing about Nigel, as much as he's currently tapping into something people are annoyed about, there's a lot of negativity. And I think with regards to politics, negative campaigns don't always win. You want to see positivity, what his vision for the future may be.
Well, tell me about the negativity.
Well, that we're in a period of national decline, that, you know, I think the other thing is Brexit's still a little bit of a hot potato, I think, for lots of people. I think there isn't many people that feel better off after 14 years. The pandemic's going to have played a part in that. Brexit has also played a part. And I think if you look at public polling, lots of people sort of say either they wish they voted Remain or they don't know if Brexit was a good idea. I think he's the one that looks most well put together, and I think people like that sort of thing in this country. And I think also it's quite an interesting message to do it from Blenheim Palace compared to the other two. But I think, truth be told, Joe Bloggs on the street probably won't be watching any of these. I think it's speaking to those already that are politically engaged and to cause stories within Westminster more than anything else.
What did you make of Kemi Badenoch's speech?
Well, I don't really make much of Kemi Badenoch's speeches anywhere, to be honest with you. I think the only current light at the end of the tunnel for Keir Starmer is that he might be terrible, but she's worse than him at the moment.
Well, that's hardly an accolade, is it?
No, quite. But if he's gonna need something to hold on at the moment, and that might be it. Because isn't really any proper opposition in this country.
So can I just talk about Keir Starmer? He is the Prime Minister. He is the one that's meant to have a vision for this country and where we're going. The way that was shot, it looked like a student had shot it on a phone. It was badly composed. He looks dishevelled. He is the Prime Minister. The shirt is badly fitting. He looks like he's in the doctor's waiting room.
Yeah, I think this is supposed to be looking like number 10. I don't know if it is or it isn't. And in fact, it looks like my nan's spare room in a way.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't been there, but yes.
I think for me, it reminds me a little bit of the Jeremy Corbyn stuff when David Cameron said as Prime Minister, put a tie on, to sing the national anthem, look properly sort of thing. I think people, the way Nigel's come across in his suit is the way people would always want you to look. And there's a little bit of the David Cameron call me Dave sort of thing of, I'm a casual, normal person and, I don't wear a tie all the time. And I think if you're representing the country and sending the message of the country, you want them looking prim and proper.
Well, I would agree with that. And also, just in terms of the front page of the Times this morning, if you are just waking up, poll gives Starmer a New Year headache. And most voters see Labour as incompetent, dishonest, unsuccessful, and think Starmer will fail at all 6 of the milestones that he's actually set his own government, according to this YouGov polling for the Times. Now, Keir Starmer is in a very difficult position here. He says this is going to be the year of change. We've done all the hard work. We all amalgamate around each other, and this is where we build this country from the grassroots.
I mean, there's a bit of this poll that makes me think, is it really a surprise? I think this is to assume that Keir Starmer was ever popular. I spent during the general election 6 weeks on the road like lots of Labour people, and there was no love for us whatsoever. I think, unfortunately, for the Conservatives, they were disliked more than us because they were very unpopular 14-year incumbent government. And it was a bit similar. I never saw the same media reporting, but I think a lot of people, they didn't come back to Labour. They basically lent us their vote. So I think it's been a bizarre electoral strategy to make these unpopular decisions around winter fuel, around the farmers' inheritance tax, allowing yourself to be in a position where you look like you were going to pay the waspy women when you never were, but you used the sort of photo ops for electoral gain at the time. And I think for the small amount of money used that they would raise, you're looking at £1.5 billion. You could have put up corporation tax by 1% and you'd bring in 3 times that amount. You wouldn't have the same optics of a load of city boys down at Westminster protesting in the barbers and whatever else. And if there's one thing in this country we know older people do, they vote. They will go out and vote in their droves. So, and I think even something that I'd support in principle, the idea of putting up VAT on private schools, or even if they were to, do something like remove the charitable status, it seems an odd priority to be 6 months in and be doing this sort of stuff. And it seems very ideological rather than, I don't think there's anybody at home going, I hope they put up the tax on private schools. We've been waiting for this for years. It isn't what people want at the moment.
No, and also the fact is actually their numbers don't make any sense. They don't stack up in the slightest. Bridget Phillipson says that actually the middle classes are welcoming VAT on private schools. No, they're not. That's a complete fabrication. But also, you're right, these are all own goals, very early own goals in a new government. And of course, the Daily Mail front page is so much much for cutting our energy bills, the energy price cap going up. You've got the private school issue rumbling on the Daily Telegraph. And, of course, yet again, the Treasury is wrong. They say that actually those schools will only put up fees by, say, 10%, but actually the schools are putting them up between 15 and 20%. And that means that pupils will leave those private schools, will go into the state system where there aren't the places. And I don't think any of this has been thought through. And you're right, it's ideological.
I suppose it will remain to be seen. The government seems to think that only 0.1% of the school population will be those that where schools will go out of business and people will have to go to the state educated sector. I'd hope certainly that the numbers had been done. I think there's the potential for pinch points in certain areas of the country where there isn't potentially the numbers to cope. But I think we'll be okay on this. And I think if you're so desperate to get your child the shortcut in life that is private education, I think, there's nothing wrong with it. I do find myself in a period of hypocrisy. I had a friend the other day saying, would you send your kids if you had kids? And I said, I don't know. I think ideologically and for social mobility, I think it doesn't work. It's wrong. It promotes inequality. But I know, having worked with people in Westminster who are privately educated, it is a shortcut through life, and you want your kids to have the best in life, obviously.
But it's about choice. But it's also about choice, isn't it? Because those parents also pay their taxes, which fund the state education system, and in fact, they're paying twice.
No, yeah, I suppose that's the point, but they're also making the choice to do that in a way. You make the choice whether you want to use private anything, healthcare or transport or whatever else, and I suppose that's up to whoever. I think that there could be a greater emphasis on private schools putting forward more bursaries that could afford.
But they already do, and actually that's going to be one of the biggest casualties of this, is because as the number of pupils drops going into private schools, it also means their revenue drops. That means there will be fewer bursaries going to those children from poorer households. So that is going to be one aspect of that. The other thing is many of those independent schools open their sports facilities for the use of the local community. That will also stop. I don't think the government understands any of that.
Possibly not, and I don't know how many of them were privately educated, what the experience is. I certainly don't know, I wouldn't claim to know, and I think therefore you have to have experts or those that have been. I suppose the other argument to that would be they normally have very good sports facilities. Does it show that we don't invest in our own enough for everybody to have great sporting facilities regardless of private or state education? And I suppose with regards to the bursaries, I think this is maybe sometimes the problem with private anything. There has to be a profit, and if education becomes a business, which it partly is with university and private education, become a business model, people are always going to miss out, and there's got to be money made.
Do you think Starmer can hang on?
No, I said on election night I'd give him 2 years. I think Reform are in the ascendancy. We're lucky this time round in if those elections that will go ahead in 2025, it's quite a high tide mark for the Tories and not for us. There'll be more emphasis on Reform doing better against the Tories. But if Anas Sarwar doesn't win in Scotland in 2026, which I don't think he will do after all the campaigning he's done and how long the SNP have been in charge, and we lose Wales for the first time ever in over 100 years, I think the knives will come out for the right of the party and you'll start to see movement against it.
Matthew, really good to talk to you. Happy New Year. Thank you very much for joining me on this New Year's Day. Matthew Talbot there, ex-Labour advisor and political commentator. We'll take a break now. Of course, this morning when I came to work, it was very windy. That's an understatement, as I got blown towards the front door of this building. Well, joining me after the break, Joe Wheeler, broadcaster and meteorologist. What's in store for 2025? We'll find out.
I wonder, from your experience as a working politician, Andrea, how many constituents, when you had them, came up to you and said, "You know what? Taxes have gone up, and I think that's a really good thing. I think, you know that tax that the Conservatives put on X? I think that's a really good idea. I really support that."
Obviously, business rates should be kept low. You know, you should show that Britain's open for business. And it's been proven, hasn't it? You know, the more money that people can keep themselves less in tax, then, you know, it's better for the economy. The more they're going to spend in the economy anyways.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. This is Talk 722, Wednesday, January the 1st. Pensioner punch for the first of the month. A very happy New Year to all of you if you are just waking up. Thanks ever so much for all your lovely messages this morning. I'm talking about Keir Starmer. He says this is the year we come together, we rebuild this country, we can make it, I'm paraphrasing, great again. Do you think he is the man to do that? Do you think that Starmer can actually rebuild Britain in 2025? Or do you think, as Matthew Torbett does, that Keir Starmer has got less than 2 years in that top job? Things are not going well for Labour. There's a lot in the press this morning about the latest polling. This is the front page of the Times this morning, if you are just waking up. It says, poll gives Starmer a headache for the new year. Yeah, most voters see Labour as incompetent, dishonest and unsuccessful, and think Starmer will fail on all 6 of the milestones that he's actually set his government. That's according to YouGov polling for the Times. Do you think that Starmer can actually rebuild Britain in 2025? The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Jackie, good morning to you. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all at Talk. Thank goodness for your common sense. Starmer is a communist who hates this country. Kemi is sponsored by the idiots running the Conservative Party. And Farage has never changed and just says what we all think. Hopefully he will succeed and we will have a right of centre government again. Happy New Year, Dr. Bull. I love your waistcoat. Thank you very much. Get Starmer off. Please, what an awful New Year's message. What the heck is he talking about? He's here to ruin the country, and I've come to the conclusion Starmer is our enemy. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. We're looking at the difference between the Prime Minister's New Year's speech to the nation, Kemi Badenoch's speech to the nation, and Nigel Farage's speech to the nation. They're poles apart, not just in terms of the content, but also in the way they're constructed and the way they're delivered and the resonance of those messages. I'll play those again a little bit later, but get in touch, please, and tell me your thoughts on all of the above. Right, let's now talk about the new year and the weather that has ensued. Now, on the way here, the wind was incredibly fierce. Of course, there were real concerns last night about New Year's Eve celebrations being cancelled here in London. Luckily, they went ahead, and I'm delighted they did. Joining me now, Joe Wheeler, broadcaster and meteorologist. Good morning, Joe. Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year. Your waistcoat is indeed very fetching.
Oh, well, that's very kind. I look like I'm going riding, actually, I think, later.
No, I don't think so. I did think you said a pensioner punch at the beginning.
No, I said a pinch and a punch. Well, it's been ages since I've seen you, actually, because, of course, I used to see you downstairs in the studios downstairs. Anyway, how was the new year?
Weather-wise?
No, for you.
Oh, for me? Well,
yes.
It was quite quiet, given the fact I'm here at 7:20 in the morning.
That's also true.
As I'm sure yours was.
Well, it was thrilling.
It was a lovely festive period, let's put it that way.
Good.
So really enjoyed that. But, of course, we have been weather watching because for quite some time we've seen this spell of cold weather coming up. And so kind of all eyes glued to the charts, what's happening. And as often happens, we get models that disagree with each other. And in fact, they're still disagreeing with each other in terms of what happens next. But what we do know and what we are seeing already is this area of rain working its way southwards. It actually stalled across central parts of the country last night. With it, we've got some very strong winds. To the north of that, it's very blustery. Now a northerly wind. We've got wind and snow. And so we're looking at all these wintry problems over the next few days, which, of course, we haven't really seen over Christmas. We had fog, but it was fairly mild. Looking at the radar this morning, there's a line of convection, lying pretty much East Midlands back down into South Wales. Now, if you were out and about this morning, that would be seriously problematic if you encountered it. It's a sudden rain squall with strong winds, really unpleasant conditions. Only lasts a few minutes, but that's working its way southwards. So we're going to see that area of cloud and rain doing that today, working its way down to the south. And with it, we're seeing this cold air coming in behind, and that's where we start to get the winteriness.
Right. I mean, it certainly seems very seasonal now.
Well, yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, but actually, in many ways, we've been lucky, haven't we, over the festive period? It was relatively mild, as you say. I did get a lot of fog over the festive period, but it did tend to break up. And, of course, now we're beginning to see winter. Quelle surprise.
Exactly. I mean, what else do you expect? I think it's really, as you say, we've been through a period of complacency, and then suddenly we're going to face these things, which is going to be quite dramatic in places. We'll see some very strong, blustery, blizzardy showers over parts of Scotland today. That cold air coming in behind. And then after that, we kind of get a high-pressure system, which means that inland it'll be quite bright. We should see some sunshine, which will be a change, but wintry showers along the coasts. The issue is that anything that falls through that is likely to fall as snow. So there's a bit of a question mark over the weekend. Looks like something's coming up from the south. Now, that's quite unusual. So we could see some fairly heavy snowfall across southern parts of the country. Usually, that would be supplanted by milder conditions coming in behind. But this time, I don't think we will. It only pushes its way so far, then it starts to retreat southward again. So the cold air stays with us, and all that does is give some snow. But that's one to watch for the weekend when people may well be travelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Exciting for young children, though. Joe, thanks ever so much. I wish you a very happy New Year as well. That's Joe Wheeler, broadcaster and meteorologist. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. Happy New Year, David. This is Donna in Birmingham. Happy New Year to you. Sadiq definitely got it right. I'm a straight white woman, and if I go to London, I definitely don't look like anyone else in the capital. I used to go to London every year for my birthday. Not anymore. I'm scared. That's a terrible message, Donna. It is still a brilliant city, despite Sadiq Khan and everything that he's done to London, particularly making the roads a mess, imposing 20-mile-an-hour zones, the ULEZ expansion, which has been fought by people across London, and, of course, the expense of driving into London with ULEZ and the congestion charge as well. It's interesting, actually. Theo was saying earlier on he doesn't think that Khan will actually stand again, and that the ultimate prize for him is getting the gong. Maybe that means that it's mission over for Sadiq Khan. Maybe it's time to move over and let another mayor into London. We'll take a break now. After the break, I want to talk about Donald Trump. Of course, he takes office on the 20th of January, so 19 days' time. Of course, we've still got the Chagos Islands deal going through, the ridiculous sums of money that Mauritius is now asking for from the United Kingdom. The fact is that the politicians are trying to expedite that deal before Trump comes into power because they know that he's not in favour of that particular deal. But there's a much bigger question about what we can expect from a Donald Trump presidency as he becomes the 47th president. What can we expect? I'll be joined by Tom Packer, who's fellow of UCL's Centre for US Politics. That's after this break. This is Morning Glory. A very good morning to you.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Good morning. Happy New Year. Wednesday, January the 1st, 2025. Did you have a fantastic New Year? Are you a little bleary-eyed this morning? But thank you very much indeed for your company this morning. Shall we just take a wander through the papers? The front page of the Times this morning. Poll gives Starmer a New Year headache. This is really interesting in terms of the detail because most voters, according to this poll, YouGov poll for the Times, see Labour as incompetent, dishonest and unsuccessful. They think Starmer will fail on all 6 of the milestones he has set for his government. When you look at all of the voters, only 31% of voters declare themselves optimistic about the year. Now, Starmer promises that his battle to change Britain will take place this year. Voters, though, according to this poll, are losing patience. Just 21% say they trust Labour, and most on the economy. 24% said they prefer the Conservatives. Also, the rows over private schools, of course, VAT being added to the cost of private fees, taking place from today. That's the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Also, the Mirror talking about Starmer's speech. Lots of other papers also majoring on the energy, the price cap going up as well. This is the Daily Mail. So much for cutting our energy bills. Look, Ed Miliband promised they're going to go down by 300 quid. No, they're not. They're going up. So those are the latest headlines this morning if you are just waking up. Let's talk about Donald Trump now, shall we? Because, of course, we have 19 days until he assumes office in the United States. He certainly is a very different president, I think, this time from the president he was last time. We talked yesterday about the fact he's assembled a cabinet from all over the place. He's actually brought in experts from all modalities. Obviously, Elon Musk is the highest profile of all of those. But what does a Trump presidency actually mean for the United States? And also, what does it mean for countries like the United Kingdom, a staunch ally of the United States, and also the EU? There's another big story as well about the fall in the euro because of confidence in the Eurozone based on Trump coming in as the new US president. We'll talk about that as well. Tom Packer, fellow of UCL Centre for US Politics, joins me now. Good morning to you and Happy New Year.
Good morning, David. Happy New Year.
I mean, it's fascinating. We've got 19 days to go until Donald Trump comes into the White House, assumes presidency. But also, he is a very changed man, I think. This is a different type of presidency. He's also been remarkably quiet in the last few weeks, possibly more considered.
Quite possibly. I think there's a sense that he's very unusual among US presidents. He became president without much political experience, or virtually none. So I think it does make more of a difference. He also had lots of people very hostile to him in his own party. Still, like a lot of who behind closed doors aren't very enthusiastic about him. But that's less true this time. In some ways, he's moved his agenda, like got more centrist or left wing, if you will, which is also another significant difference. But at the same time, I think the best predictor of future performance is past performance. So quite often during his last presidency, we've got people saying, oh, it'll be completely different from now on. Like, I think he'll probably look more like his previous presidency than anything else.
I mean, what comes across loud and clear to me is that he's going to put the US first.
I certainly think that's how I'd see it. I think there's also a certain degree. It's very striking, that video he's just put up. It was very much, there was sort of vague general descriptions. In fact, it's a bit more specific, like fight the deep state. It was about defending himself, defending his own position. What defending the US first, of course, is that's a bit of the eye of the beholder. What does that consist of? So does that consist of putting on very high tariffs on the rest of the world, even close allies like Britain? Does it consist of being closer to his allies and pushing back against countries like China or possibly Russia? And I think to a certain degree, we're going to see that when we come there. I suspect he'll be a bit closer to his traditional allies and a bit more hostile, particularly to Russia, than is currently seen. But we will, to a certain degree, we'll have to wait and see. And I suspect there'll be a lot of strong rhetoric that isn't necessarily reflected in policy change.
I mean, let's go through those one by one. But let's start. I mean, he's obviously going to, I assume, pardon himself as one of the first measures he does as president, pardon those people who rioted in the Capitol. Other things also, I was very minded when I was reading what he's doing. He wants wants the American economy to grow significantly, and he's talking about cutting corporation tax, something that I have said for a long time we need to do in this country to make our countries competitive in terms of ensuring businesses grow and prosper in those countries.
Well, of course, his presidency last time saw a big cut in corporation tax already. The American corporation tax historically actually been quite high for a Western country, and that's got less and less true. One thing I'd say is there's a lot of particularly his tax cuts for people as opposed to corporations. From last time that are expiring. There were bits of some of Joe Biden's spending that are expiring. I think if we get big change in tax outside tariffs and tax and spend, it'll be in that area. Because what you've got to remember in America, the president isn't in charge the way a British prime minister is. To get legislation, it's got to go through the Senate, it's got to go through the House. Republicans have a small majority in the Senate, but they have a very small majority in the House. So unless they can get some Democrats, which is very tough, it's going to be very hard to pass much because it only takes 1 or 2 Republicans to wobble. So I don't think we'll get sweeping legislation, but besides anything else, he just doesn't have the votes to support it.
So let's talk about tariffs, because that is something that we're seeing in this country. There is real concern about the tariffs that are going to be levied, particularly on China, and many people would argue that's the right thing to do. But levying taxes on, say, this country. Now, there is an uneasy relationship also between our government and what they have said about Donald Trump, particularly people like David Lammy calling him a neo-Nazi sympathiser sociopath, and the other people making up that cabinet and Donald Trump. I mean, I don't think there's much love lost. That being said, Donald Trump is very fond of this country. Obviously, he has ancestry from this country. He has business assets in this country. What's your reading of what he'll do?
So I think they'll probably, unless he gets some big deal with China, big new tariffs to China. They're talking about 60%. I think they'll be trying to adjust, at a minimum, they'll be trying to adjust the trading relationship with the rest of the West. And I think it's quite unpredictable. I think if Britain plays their cards right, I think you're very right that Trump is actually naturally very positive Britain, as you point out. His mother was a very patriotic, royalist, first-generation immigrant to the United States. Yeah. He has a lot of affection for the UK. And I think to some degree, in fairness to our government, which I'm not the world's biggest fan of either, they do sort of understand it. David Lammy said some very stupid things a few years ago, given he's now Foreign Secretary. He's played it down a lot. They've sent a very significant figure in Peter Mandelson, or going to send, as ambassador, who I think has an awareness of this. I think there's an awareness now in a way there wasn't in 2016, 17, that Donald Trump tends to be nice to people who are nice to him. And you can sort of see that in the reaction of the government. Their supporters want them to slag off Trump and say he's Satan. And they're being very careful not to say things like that. So I think it's unpredictable. I think there is room for Britain perhaps to get a relatively better deal than other countries. Maybe the best hope of avoiding a big trade war in the West is some kind of deal where everyone reduces their restrictions, which of course would be very good news for Britain, so we don't belong to a big trading bloc. But I think a lot depends how it's managed, a lot depends what happens within the Trump administration, a lot depends whether they want to prioritise China versus other Western countries as an economic rival. I think the biggest thing is there will be a lack of consistency. They'll be going backwards and forwards. There'll be lots of arguments about it.
And of course, Donald Trump loves a state visit, and of course that's one thing we're extremely good at in this country. And of course, he will see that as a big sort of measure of flattery. Can we just talk about immigration? That's one of the things that actually exercise the American people. Donald Trump has promised to be tough on immigration. In fact, he's promised to be pretty ruthless on immigration, even for those people who have been in the United States for many years illegally.
And one thing I'd say, as always with President Trump, there's also a bit of inconsistency. There's talk about, well, we'll be tough on illegal immigration, but we'll let in higher levels of skilled migration. So there's still a bit of clarity. What I think there will be is a massive clampdown on illegal immigration. They'll restore virtually all the policies as far as they can the Biden administration repealed. They'll also get rid of some of the pro-immigration policies the Biden administration had. There's been a huge swing in public opinion. They actually got quite pro-immigration by historic standards during Trump's presidency. Then when Biden did his thing of letting people through at the border, there was a massive swing. So American public opinion is now more hostile to immigration than it's been for many decades. I suspect they'll start swinging back because people tend to react against policy. They'll think, oh, it's getting tougher. I'm not so sure we need to be so tough on immigration. So it'll be interesting how they manage it. Will they get some legislation through? Possibly. Particularly as the Democrats feel very burnt and that they're very pro-immigration positions that hurt them a lot. but the Republicans do have a very small majority. What I think there will be at minimum is a very big clampdown on certain kinds of illegal immigration, and there'll be a lot of noise about it. But I'm not sure we'll necessarily get significant lasting policy change.
And what about foreign policy? Because, of course, he's inheriting the situation in Ukraine. Putin, I think, looks up to Trump. I think he understands Trump. I think the two of them are well matched, actually. Trump says he will end that war on day one of his presidency. How will he do that?
Well, I suspect he won't. I could be proven wrong, but I suspect he won't end on day one. That's I think in some ways typical Trump hyperbole. I think it's harder to predict this because a lot depends what the Ukrainians want to do, and even more what the Russian government wants to do. I suspect Trump will push some kind of deal. There's been a big move in Ukraine to doing some kind of deal. Try and do it with Russia. And I think it's very unpredictable. Will Russia and Ukraine be able to find a position that overlaps? My suspicion is if they can't find some kind of deal, that what will happen is actually Trump will then support more aid to Ukraine. There's already been lots of movements in that direction. It would be the easy thing for him to do because the Democrats are very united on Ukraine aid and the Republicans are split. And it might actually become a lot easier. Just like under President Obama, it was easier to spend money on defense, on things like the Iraq War than it's been under President Bush. But there is always a possibility of a deal. I'm not a Ukrainian/Russian expert, so I don't know what will happen. But obviously the best thing that would happen is if the people of Ukraine can be free and they can stop shooting each other about it.
I mean, Nigel Farage says the world will be a safer place under Donald Trump. Is he right?
You know, what was it was said about the French Revolution? Too early to tell. I do think President Trump is very committed to avoiding nuclear war. He is worried about wars. He's careful about getting fully involved in conflict. At the same time, he is a bit of a sort of live grenade. He doesn't have the same depth of expertise some presidents have. So, if I'm being honest, I don't think it makes much difference either way.
Oh, I think we've lost you, but thank you ever so much, Tom Packer there, fellow of UCL Centre for US Politics, about what it means for Donald Trump coming into office, of course, in just 19 days' time, and the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. I agree. I think actually we have a unique bond. The question is how that plays out with our government, who haven't exactly been kind about Donald Trump in the past, but that all remains to be seen. Right, let's take a call. I'm delighted to say that Rabina is on the phone from Essex. A very happy New Year, Rabina.
A very happy New Year to you, my dear David, to your mother and your family.
Oh, well, that's so sweet of you. How are you? Did you have a nice Christmas? How was New Year?
Very quiet, but you know, and you're looking very spiffy today, David.
Well, you know, you've got to make an effort, Rabina.
I know you have, and I mean, that naughty Tom is not on duty today.
No, he's not.
But I've sent my love to him and Gabriella, because without you all, what would I do?
Well, that is very true. Now, we spoke some weeks ago, actually. So did you indulge in a festive tipple?
Of course.
Excellent.
Of course. I mean, after all, I might be old, but I won't be cold and I won't be dopey without my champagne.
Well, no, that's right. I've forgotten that you are a champagne freak, aren't you? Yes. And for those people who haven't had the great pleasure of meeting you, just remind people of how young you are.
Well, this will be my 98th year coming now, won't it?
Fantastic.
98 this year, if I live long enough, and I've got to live to be 100. I promised you that, didn't I?
You did promise me that. Now, so given that we have this goal to live to 100, what are the New Year's resolutions for a 97-year-old?
Oh, no, I haven't got any resolutions. I'll just go on like I do. Go on speaking to my one and only friend daily. My son will look after me. I'll eat sensibly and drink my champers and, of course, my lovely chocolates. What else is there, David, for me now?
Well, it sounds marvellous. Rabina, thanks ever so much for calling in, and I wish you...
Oh, David, you know I love you so much. And I wouldn't do anything without you at weekends, would I?
Oh, well, you are very sweet, Rabina. I wish you a very happy New Year. I will see you on Saturday when I do Weekend Breakfast, of course. Thanks ever so much for calling in. Rabina in Essex with her recipe for a long life. Champagne, eating sensibly, and some more champagne. Sounds marvellous to me. Keep your messages coming in, please. Also, I'm asking about Keir Starmer. He says this is the year that we turn things around, where the country unites behind the Labour Party, behind Keir Starmer, and that this is the year that we see a difference. Do you think this is the year that Keir Starmer can turn it round, or do you think that Keir Starmer's days are numbered? And if so, how long has he actually got? Good morning, Dr. David, says Carolyn Shoreham by Sea, one of our regulars. Good morning. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year, David, and all at talkTV. It's great to see you again, looking fab in another very dashing waistcoat. Thank you. I think we're going to need you even more to keep us informed and sane in the coming months. The messages were, as you say, very different, with only Nigel's having the strength and hope this country so desperately needs. Have a great day. And you, Carol, and Happy New Year to you. Just one more. It's not just Starmer who's a communist and hates this country and is here to destroy it. It's also Rachel Reeves and the rest of the cabinet. We don't just need to get rid of Starmer. The whole bunch needs to go. The whole of the Labour Party needs to go. Just one quick one, actually, because it's rather brilliant. Did you notice in the London fireworks they played Things Can Only Get Better? That's an ode to the 1997, of course, Tony Blair pulling the strings of Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan, all the rest of them. So they played that. But also, Ellie, good morning to you. Happy New Year, says the song before Things Can Only Get Better was Why Does It Always Rain on Me, signifying Rishi Sunak's election announcement, because it was a dig at him when he got absolutely soaking wet. Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much for that, Ellie. We'll take a break. Then, of course, it's New Year's Day. Lots of you on the move today, on the roads, on the railways, if they're running. And, of course, we've heard from Joe that the weather is not exactly on our side. I'm going to be talking to Simon Calder, travel correspondent of The Independent. We speak every single day. Can't wait for that. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
Fred Goodwin, the the head of Royal Bank of Scotland, who lost his knighthood for his antics during the credit crunch crisis. Sadiq Khan, to many people, might be seen as being in the same bracket. He hasn't been, of course, accused of anything along those lines, but the honour system is surely there to reward the great and the good. And it seems as if, from Sadiq Khan to Gareth Southgate to the chap who runs Network Rail, this year we seem to be rewarding failure.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning, happy new year. 8 minutes to 8 on Wednesday, January the 1st. I'm David Bull. Happy New Year. Did you have a fantastic time? How are you feeling this morning? Well, it's a new year. New Year's resolutions, of course. Delighted to see the fireworks taking place in London last night. Very sad for Edinburgh, of course. We had those hideous winds overnight, which are still going. Obviously, we had Joe on earlier talking about the fact that the weather is still pretty atrocious around the country. And many of you on the roads, the railways, trying to get to different places today to continue the celebrations. Joining me now, Simon Calder, travel correspondent at The Independent, who I speak to every single day, it seems. Good morning, Simon.
Happy New Year, David, to you and all your listeners and viewers. And, well, unfortunately, if the travel industry had resolved to put an end to disruption, I'm afraid 2025 has started very badly. I'm looking particularly, we just heard that there's really bad weather, particularly in the north of England. TransPennine Express, which runs intercity trains in the north of England, has said that on pretty much any line going across the Pennines, that's from Liverpool or Manchester to Hull, to Newcastle, to Sheffield, to Scarborough, to Redcar, to York, there you cannot travel, they're saying. There are no trains and no replacement buses. Northern, which runs shorter distance services, say flooding between Manchester Airport and Manchester Piccadilly is thwarting things. You can't travel basically between Liverpool and Manchester. And we're here in the 200th anniversary year of the passenger railway, which of course we invented, and not many people are going to many places. Just warning that engineering works are continuing. So, for instance, the Liverpool Street Station is still closed, and no trains running at all on ScotRail. That's not because of the bad weather, although a lot of them would be cancelled if they were running. It's simply because that's what the tradition is. No trains on New Year's Day in Scotland.
And just in terms of that Liverpool Street, is there any sense when that might reopen?
It's due to open tomorrow, and to be fair, the closure at London Paddington and London St Pancras, they opened on time, and this will be hopefully clearly in time for people to get back to work with a spring in their step, commuting in from lovely Essex and Suffolk and Norfolk and Cambridgeshire. Meanwhile, I'd love to say that everything's working calmly on the in the skies, but I'm afraid that's not the case. It's not, as far as I can see, anything to do with bad weather, although if you are, for instance, coming into Manchester Airport, you'll suddenly find that there aren't many trains running because of flooding, so that could be challenging. We've got a combination of delays and diversions and cancellations. So, well, where to start? A couple of long delays coming into Manchester Airport. Qatar Airways from Doha, that's 5 hours late. That's going to mean that passengers out to Doha are also going to be late, and I fear lots of misconnections there. In the London area, Virgin's flight VS8 from Los Angeles to London was took off as normal yesterday afternoon, local time in California. By 10 o'clock in local time in Chicago, it had diverted. I've been trying to find out why. Obviously, everybody's safe, but people, instead of spending their New Year's Eve in flight and arriving at Heathrow this morning, are instead in hotels in Chicago, a place none of them thought they would be seeing the New Year in. And I'm seeing lots of cancellations in and out of Heathrow, 28 of them on British Airways, and then one on Lufthansa and one on Swiss. It's difficult to tell, and I can't say at this stage whether those are fresh cancellations or they were just cancellations because the airlines thought, well, frankly, nobody's going to be travelling at 7 or 8 o'clock on a New Year's Day, so we'll cancel that rather than fly an empty plane. So, yeah, wherever you're going, it's not looking great. And on the ferries, well, again, nothing sailing much in Scotland, but it will be tomorrow, and that's when we're going to see disruption. And as the Met Office is saying, and as we've been hearing, that's gradually going to kind of spread south. So from what I can see, if you are lucky enough to live around the Wash, so Lincolnshire, South Yorkshire, Norfolk, then there's a good chance you won't be caught up in a weather warning pretty much everywhere else in the country. Rain, snow, high winds is going to make it a slightly grim start to your New Year if you are trying to travel.
Simon, what great news. Happy New Year.
Sorry.
Happy New Year, though. Thanks ever so much. Always a great pleasure to talk to you. Simon Calder there, travel correspondent at The Independent. I've just seen 100 flood warnings now in place around the United Kingdom. Of course, please do check before you travel. Let's take a voice note now from Perry, talking about the leaders' New Year messages. Good morning.
Morning, David. According to, well, the way I look at it, I see Keir Starmer just coming out with the usual baffle. And as for Kemi, all she talked about was the Conservative Party, whereas Nigel talked about the country and how great it is. That's the difference. The man needs to be Prime Minister.
Wow, strong comment indeed. We'll play all of those interviews or those speeches from the leaders a little later on. We'll actually go to a break now before the top of the hour. After the break, we'll look at all the political stories making the papers this morning. So we will talk about the leaders' speeches, those New Year speeches they've given to the public. I'm going to be talking to Andrew Allison, who's head of campaigns for Popular Conservatism. Also about Kemi Badenoch. Did she have resonance in terms of her New Year's speech that she gave to the nation? Nigel Farage as well. Should he be Prime Minister? Did he get the tone of his message right? We'll talk all about that as well. Also, could the rise of reform mean that we move to proportional representation? We'll talk about that as well. This is Morning Glory. A very good morning to you.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. Shot from distance, he's in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in on the ball, slides it in. An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No. There's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning to you. Happy New Year. Pinch and punch for the first of the month. Wednesday, January the 1st. I'm David Bull. This is Morning Glory. I'm just watching live pictures coming in of fireworks in Las Vegas celebrating the new year as the new year rolls across the world. Of course, we saw those stunning displays in Australia and New Zealand. And then, of course, last night I was absolutely delighted to see that Britain did ring in the celebrations of New Year despite the atrocious weather that hit London. And, of course, very sadly, the Hogmanay celebrations were cancelled up in Edinburgh. But Big Ben was lit up, the London Eye, the Houses of Parliament, something like 12,000 fireworks, 420 lights. Really sensational pictures, as you can see there from London, celebrating the beginning of 2025. Big Ben struck, obviously, midnight, and then after that, the 11-minute display began with the message, "Your year is unwritten." There was a very diverse soundtrack, including Vera Lynn, Sir Elton John, Travis, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, One Direction, amongst others. There were also voiceovers from Dame Imelda Staunton, Sir Ian McKellen as well. The celebration also looked back at 2024 with topics including the weather, the Paris Olympics and Paralympics, and Euro 2024. Now, for those who are rather more eagle-eyed, there was also, as you would expect from Sadiq Khan, there was a political message embedded in the celebrations in London. Of course, in 1997, they used the theme tune, Things Can Only Get Better. Well, guess what? They used it again. That was definitely a message being sent out by Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, who is replete with his gong. And at the same time, also Paddington Bear appeared, talking about that anyone is welcome in London.
When skies are grey, hope is the way. In London, everyone is different. But that means anyone can fit in. I think she must be right, because although I don't look like anyone else, I really do feel at home. Happy New Year. Love from Paddington.
Oh, I mean, I watched it this morning because obviously I went to bed and then I had buyer's remorse thinking I wish I'd been there. It looks absolutely fantastic. Well, joining me now is Andrew Allison, who's head of campaigns at Popular Conservatism. Very good morning to you. Happy New Year.
Good morning, David. Happy New Year to you too.
Are you feeling optimistic about 2025? The majority of the country aren't.
I'm not feeling very optimistic about the UK. We've got about another 4 years or so of this ghastly Labour government, so I can't really feel very optimistic about that. But things on the international stage are changing. France is almost ungovernable at the moment, so let's see where that goes. We've got federal elections in Germany coming up, and it very much looks like Pierre Poilievre is going to become the Conservative Prime Minister of Canada later this year. And that's not even mentioning the election of Donald Trump. So I think on the international stage, it's looking a lot brighter than it is domestically.
Well, it's really interesting. We were talking earlier about the United States, and obviously Trump has 19 days until he becomes US president. And, of course, the impact. I mean, hopefully the UK will be somewhat sheltered from that because, of course, Trump loves the United Kingdom, and we hope we can avoid some of those tariffs if the Labour government swallows its pride and actually does a deal with Trump. But what we are seeing is the Eurozone being hit really hard as well. Investors are betting the euro will hit parity with the dollar because, of course, the Eurozone isn't doing very well. Donald Trump has said he is going to impose tariffs on business coming in from Europe. And many people are saying, or the world's biggest bank, including those people who are saying the euro is the sick man of the G10. Euro weakness is exacerbated by US policy uncertainty.
Yes, and as I touched upon, the Franco-German alliance is what props up the EU, and that is failing completely at the moment. And as you rightly touched on, growth in the EU is roughly half of what it is in the United States. So it's looking particularly bleak in Brussels at the moment.
I think it's fair to say Keir Starmer's had a pretty rocky 6 months, his first 6 months in the job. So this was an opportunity to rephrase his vision for the country. He did a New Year's speech. He talked about this is the year when we gather round, when we're actually going to rebuild this country. In terms of his speech, what did you think of it?
Well, not very much, really. I mean, if you go back to the summer, just a week or two after he was elected, he was basically saying that life is going to be bleak. We got some really bad stuff coming down the road towards you. And sure enough, we got that budget just a couple of months ago. So he's framed the narrative that things can only really get worse before they can get better. And now he's trying to come up with some optimism. He's even trying to use the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War to try and generate some optimism.
I felt that was incredibly disingenuous. The fact
is,
I
did as well. Completely disingenuous. I mean, the Labour Party, in many ways, is quite ashamed of our history. It's quite ashamed of what Winston Churchill did. And yet it's now trying to use that and use the sacrifices of that great generation to its own political ends. But then nothing surprises me. I mean, we saw it with Sadiq Khan last night. He has to put a little bit of politics even into something that is supposed to be non-political.
Let's pause, actually. Let's just look at Keir Starmer's New Year's message to the nation, and then we'll dissect it after that. Have a look at this.
Till you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you. A fight for change that will define this year, next year, and indeed every waking hour of this government. We have a clear plan for change. 1.5 million new homes, restoring the dream of home ownership. Children starting school ready to learn. A more secure energy system, waiting lists cut dramatically, immigration reduced, neighbourhood police tackling antisocial behaviour in every community, and more cash in your pocket wherever you live.
Everything about that is wrong. He's badly dressed, it's badly framed, it's badly shot, there's no optimism, no vision. Someone said he looks like a geography teacher.
I think you're insulting geography teachers.
Well, I think I am too, yeah.
If you say that. No, you're completely correct. I mean, this is the man who has slashed removed the winter fuel payments from so many pensioners this year, which, of course, was not in the Labour Party manifesto. You look at his attack on the countryside and farmers. You look at Ed Miliband's barking net zero policies that are going to impoverish us. You look at Rachel Reeves' £40 billion worth of tax increases that could push us into recession next year. I mean, as Keir Starmer simply spent too many hours on board aircraft flying around the world for him to actually understand what is actually happening here in the UK.
OK, let's turn to your lot, shall we? Kemi Badenoch, she also gave a New Year message. Let's play hers.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. the Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
So again, lots of detractors saying this is all about the Conservative Party. It wasn't about Britain. What did you think?
It seemed like the trailer to a movie. What I'd really like to see now is the movie, because I feel that, you know,
it's not finished.
Well, she's saying that, you know, this is a long-term project. What we're going to have 4 years. Look, we've got conservative principles. We can then have conservative positions. Surely that is possible now. I'm not saying that she has to have exact policies because we are so far away from a general election. But we really do need more meat on the bones here. I mean, she must realise that Nigel Farage and Reform are breathing down the Conservative Party's neck. And we've got just now 4 months away, the 1st of May, we've got local elections. I mean, we know that some of them may be cancelled, but there's still going to be a significant amount of local elections right throughout the country. And if Reform do well there, which I probably expect that they will, what's she going to say then? We simply need more meat on the bones. We need more action this day, I think, from Kemi.
OK, so the Conservative Party has 131,680 members. Reform UK now has 160,000 members, so surpassing the Conservative Party. Let's juxtapose those two speeches with Nigel Farage. He chose Blenheim Palace as the backdrop to his New Year's address to the nation. There is no doubt in my mind he has a real sense of the history of this country, and putting that into perspective with where the country needs to be, pushing the country forward to make it brighter. Let's take a look.
The fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people, and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of. It was also because I'd fought so hard and so long for us to get back our independence, Brexit, taking back control of our own lives, and to see that completely squandered by a Conservative Party who frankly never believed in it, but used it for electoral advantage in 2019.
Nigel Farage talking about the country, no mention of reform.
True. And I think his views on the state of the country are rather accurate, aren't they? As opposed to Keir Starmer's, which we just heard of, which just doesn't seem to hold water at all. And, you know, I used the analogy before that Kemi seemed to come up with the trailer and what we want is the movie. I think what we got from Nigel really was the movie. He stated what the problems were and he stated what Reform will do about it. And I think that's what the public wants.
There is a real sense, and certainly from what people are telling me, that actually watching those three speeches separately, that Nigel Farage is the most prime ministerial, talking about the role of the nation. It's nicely shot. The message, I think, is heartfelt. But also when you look at the rise of reform, and you mentioned the local elections there, this is going to be the big test, not just for the Labour Party, but also for the Conservative Party. The Conservatives keep telling me they're doing well in the local elections. Now, also, we need to keep an eye on Wales, I think, particularly on Wales, because that will yield some very interesting results.
Yes, Wales will, and I'm pleased that you mentioned that. And of course, the Conservative Party got rid of its leader, Andrew Davies, which I think was a huge mistake just a few weeks ago. So that is going to be interesting. But I think it's going to be a major test for all the political parties. I mean, Labour will perhaps not expect to do particularly well in the Shires. It never usually does. If it has a bad night, it will say it will be expected. But the Conservative Party really has to do well. to show that Kemi Badenoch's leadership is working. But also reform has to do particularly well, just to prove that it really does have that momentum, that all these extra people who are joining it, it's translating across the country and people are wanting reform.
And when you look at the other papers this morning, the Daily Mail, so much for cutting our energy bills, the energy price cap going up. The fact is that private schools back on the front page this morning of the Daily Telegraph. These are all things that the Labour Party has enacted. But when you read an article by a friend of this programme, Gawain Towler, he says that actually Reform UK, in terms of the polling, first past the post has always been difficult for small parties, whether it's the Lib Dems, whether it's the Greens, whether it's Reform UK. But there reaches a tipping point where suddenly you see a change, so that Reform UK may well be at that swing point where under first past the post, and I will quote from him, if Reform keep their upward trajectory, a mere 6-point rise in the polling would, under first past the post, make them the largest party with 200 seats. So we're now at a very interesting inflection point under our current system.
Yes, we are. I mean, first past the post giveth and it also taketh away. And the old Conservative Party in Canada 30 years ago found that one out to its cost, where it was the party of government and went down to, I think, was it 2 or 3 seats. I mean, first past the post can be utterly brutal. And it is possible that Reform will reach that tipping point. I mean, I know Gwyn very well. I found it an interesting article. I mean, he was also talking about the House of Lords and how the House of Lords will probably try and block absolutely everything that a hypothetical Reform government would do, and that they would be then in favour, Labour and Conservatives would be in favour of proportional representation because it would be in their interests. But then I'm still not quite sure that would happen. I'm probably one of the few people inside the Conservative Party who actually does believe in electoral reform. I've slowly come there over the years. I think when you have a government elected with 2/3 of the seats, with a little over 1/3 of the vote, then something is clearly not working. But whether electoral reform will happen, I think it's something we could be talking about this in 5 years' time, David. We could be talking about it in 10 years' time, 15, 20 years' time, and still nothing may have happened.
And of course, just very quickly, if I may, finally, Andrew, immigration is the big I suppose the biggest concern to people in this country, and I can tell you now a total of 36,816 migrants crossed the English Channel to the United Kingdom in 2024. That is up 25% on 2023, according to provisional government figures which have just been released. The Conservative Party failed to get on top of immigration. The Labour Party has failed to get on top of immigration despite the rhetoric. They obviously got rid of the Rwanda policy as well. And, of course, this is where Reform UK does very well. Can the Conservative Party turn this around?
I think the Conservative Party can. I think that Kemi really just needs to have more action here. As I said before, we know what our principles are. We can come up with various positions without going into the minutiae of the policy. The Conservative Party completely failed on immigration, and we really do need to offer more fulsome apologies about that. We're talking about illegal immigration there, which of course is appallingly high, and we don't really know the people that we're bringing into the country either. But legal immigration is just completely and utterly unsustainable. We simply don't have the housing, we don't have the public services that can cope with that. And Sir Keith Joseph, back in the 1970s, used to talk about the common ground. He said the centre ground doesn't exist. It's the common ground. The common ground amongst the British people now is that immigration is way too high and it has to be sorted. And if Labour doesn't sort it, it's going to fail spectacularly at the polls. But equally, if the Conservative Party doesn't come up with something that will solve this problem and come up with some firm promises that it's going to deliver, it's going to suffer at the polls. And of course, the only party that's really going to benefit from that is Reform.
Really good to talk to you, Andrew. I wish you a very happy new year. Andrew Allison, the head of campaigns at Popular Conservatives. And we'll take a break now. After the break, we're going to be talking about the energy price cap. Of course, the bad news is energy prices are going up yet again, and we believe it will go up again in April. I'm going to be talking to Angela Knight, former CEO of Energy UK. She obviously also was an ex-Treasury Minister. That's all still to come. This is Morning Glory. Good morning and Happy New Year.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. Happy New Year. 8:24, Wednesday, January the 1st, 2025. Thanks ever so much for your company. Lots of messages coming in. Susan, good morning. Happy New Year. David, Keir Starmer does not look like a geography teacher. He looks like an emotionless liar. I was also talking about positivity. The vast majority of people do not feel very positive about this year under the current government. Many of you getting in touch about that. Peter, good morning and Happy New Year. Happy New Year, David. I don't feel at all positive about 2025. Starmer and his bunch of nondescript assistants are set to do even more damage to this country. The only bonus is that we have a couple of news channels speaking common sense, particularly talkTV. So keep up the good work. Thanks very much for that. I wish you a very happy New Year. As well, good morning, David. This is Mary in Kent, sunny Kent. Happy New Year. I think Starmer is in trouble if we get a cold spell, David. He's been lucky since cutting the winter fuel allowance, and the weather has been really rather mild. But if we get really bad cold snap and we see a lot of our elderly die because they're too frightened to put on the heat, he is in big trouble. I think we're all going to see Starmer this year is more of the same. He'll do everything and he can to stay in power. I'm concerned that he has scrapped the elections. We're talking about the local elections there. Of course, they're talking about amalgamations into unitary authorities, and what impact that has on the local elections is really unclear. What is interesting about those local elections is that the Conservative Party has to do well in those. Reform UK has to do well. The Lib Dems, the Greens, they have to do well. And I think Labour will be trounced in those local elections, but we wait and see. Also, earlier on, I was talking to Rabina, who is a very sprightly 96-year-old, whose secret to longevity is champagne. It's a great message for New Year's Day. Anyway, I just heard Rabina. This is, who's this? Stephanie, good morning to you and Happy New Year. I just heard Rabina and I wanted to wish you both a very Happy New Year. Two super people who deserve much happiness and good health this New Year. That's really sweet. Thank you very much. Indeed. Also, one quick one. John in Maidstone says, David, the only way that Starmer could turn things around as he starts this new year is to turn the boats around, which I know will never happen. Those figures just out, I'll bring you more of those in just a second. These are provisional figures from the government, just the numbers of people who've come into this country, of course, up 25% on the previous year. And, of course, Labour said they would smash the gangs. Well, I don't see much evidence of smashing the gangs. The total of 36,816 migrants crossed the channel to the UK in 2024. That is up 25% on 2023. 36,816 migrants. I see no evidence of this being stopped at all. It's one of the biggest electoral issues for people, that and the economy and the health service. Those are the three big ones going into the local elections, which are being held in May. As I said, got to watch Wales very carefully as well. That will be a bellwether as to what is happening. Let's also talk about some of the other stories that are making the front pages this morning. This is a very pithy headline from the Daily Mail. So much for cutting our energy bills. That's right. The energy price cap, which is the price per unit that you pay for electricity, that is going up yet again. It is going up to £1,739. That's the average bill, or if you're an average household, that is the bill you will pay. And then from April, it's going up again to £1,785. From April the 1st. Now, the energy price cap actually covers 26 million households in England, Wales and Scotland. It's set every 3 months externally by the energy regulator that is Ofgem. Now, as I was saying, it fixes the maximum price that can be charged for each unit of energy on a standard or default tariff. And this is for a typical dual-fuel household, which pays by direct debit. Well, joining me now is Angela Knight, former CEO of Energy UK and ex-Treasury Minister. A very Happy New Year to you.
And Happy New Year to you as well.
Here we go, 2025. It's meant to be a year of optimism and change, and all I see is really difficult headlines. You know, the Telegraph reporting today, energy bills to jump again. As I said, the energy price cap going up, £1,738, then up to £1,785 in April. Ed Miliband keeps telling us he's going to cut energy bills by £300 and that actually energy will fall. That is not what is happening.
No, I mean, the polite word for that is to say it's what Ed Miliband has said is a load of old rubbish. There are ruder words to be used. The reality is our energy policy here in the UK is, yes, partly caused by fluctuations in the world markets, and of course the more complicated the Middle East gets, the more that will affect our energy price. But the reality is so much of it is within our own control. We put the very increasingly heavy green charges onto people's bills. We have not got a proper policy of replacing our coal-fired power stations with something that is sustainable and reliable, and we just carry on building wind farms, which is fine in one respect, but as the wind does not blow all the time, it means that we increasingly are going to have more and more backup. So it's costing us twice as much, if you like, from a capital cost to produce 1 unit of electricity. And nobody has ever properly explained this. You know, no policymakers, and this government really is talking a story which is very wrong. They don't speak about how much has got to be spent on altering our grid, you know, to get electricity to our houses. Heat pumps might be fine, but only for a relatively small proportion of British households. Maybe we will have free solar panels, but again, that's not going to be universally possible to apply, and the sun shines for even less period than the wind blows to create renewables. So, yeah, I don't say that having a policy of renewables is wrong. What I do say is having this policy on renewables is wrong, because it costs people more, it gives us less reliable electricity, and no money is being properly spent on the backup. And worst of all, people are not being told the truth.
And there lies my next question. Why is the government being less than honest with the public? Ed Miliband almost has religious zealotry when it comes to net zero. We've never had a referendum on net zero. No one has ever voted for net zero. What people tell me is they want cheap energy. And to my mind, that is an energy mix, which can, of course, come from renewables, but it also should come from nuclear power, which gives you a very strong, stable base load. We know there's amazing engineering coming out of Rolls-Royce, a British company, making SMRs, the small modular reactors, which we know are incredibly efficient. Why are we not investing in those?
And those small-scale nuclear power, those modular nuclear power stations, they cost about £2 billion to build. They take about 2 years to build, and in space they take up about 2 football pitches, which means you don't have to have a huge amount of money spent from, you know, the national purse and waiting 15 years to complete them. He talks about it, but of course what they have not yet done, this government, is approved the Rolls-Royce design. They've delayed it yet another year, and I think it's because they're very half-hearted about it. I do think there's an element of religious zealotry about Ed Miliband, as there was when he was last time Energy Secretary. After all, I appreciate that it's New Year's Day and we've all been probably up fairly late, and I rather agree with the lady you quoted who lived a long life on champagne. I hope that is more
Rabina.
with her, so let me try and do it in a more sober manner. But the way that the price of electricity is calculated in this country is it's calculated on the price of the last power station required to meet the demand every half hour, which is always the most expensive one, which at the moment is gas. And that means all the power stations that were used to provide that electricity get paid at the price of the most expensive one. An artificially high wholesale price is created, and the author of that algorithm, as they call it, that way of calculating it, was Ed Miliband when he was last Energy Secretary. So, in fact, we could reduce our wholesale price of electricity by just altering the way that we price it, make it more of an average.
So why don't they do that?
Well, some contracts will obviously be hit, and it's always much easier to say these things than to actually do it. But the reality is there isn't a will to do it, because if you do that, then it means that the renewables start to get priced more at the price that they really are costing us.
But that's what we should be doing, transparency, to understand how much electricity costs if it comes from gas or nuclear or wind turbines.
Absolutely right. And of course, if you price a nuclear, you can say, well, that's going to be online, let's say 90%, maybe 100% of the year. If you price on wind, you say, well, that's only going to be online about 60% maximum of the year. So your wind is 60% the cost of the wind and 40% the cost of whatever else it is that is needed to make up that 100. Whereas if the small-scale nuclear, well, it's 90% plus only 10. If it's gas, it's probably about the same as nuclear, 80 or 90% plus another 10. So again, I've gone a bit mathematical before breakfast. I haven't had my coffee yet, but but what I'm trying to say is that we're not even honest about how much things are actually costing, because we all want power 100% of the time, as does our industry. And although we tend to talk, and rightly so, about people and their homes and the cost of that and whatever, that is very important. Also important is industry, which of course is the biggest electricity user in this country and is increasingly finding itself uneconomic in international battles for sales, because our price of electricity to them is so much more than it is to any of our competitors in Europe or indeed in the States.
Two very quick questions, if I may. How concerned are you about foreign ownership of energy companies? E.ON, owned by Germany, EDF is French, then you've got Scottish Power, that's Spanish.
Well, and they've been owned by them for a long time. I'm not terribly concerned. I'm far more concerned that we regulate it right, that we have a proper plan, that the policy is in place. But also I'm concerned that we make it attractive for our own industries, our own investors to invest in our own energy. And they will do that if there's a feasible plan. At the moment, there isn't one.
And finally, if I may, Great British Energy, is that the great panacea?
No. What it is it's a nice big neon sign which says, put Great Britain in there, it's for us. It isn't. It's going to provide some money for some things, I'm sure. But it's small scale in the way of the amount of money that's required. And I say again, and I'm sorry to be a bore repeating it, unless you've got a feasible plan, you haven't got you're not going to get the right outcome, whatever you may call your energy and whoever owns it. And the UK has not got a feasible plan, and the people have not been told the truth.
Angela, so refreshing to talk to you. Thank you. Enjoy your coffee. I hope you get some champagne as well. Take Rabina's advice, very important. Angela Knight, former CEO of Energy UK and ex-Treasury Minister there, saying that the people are not being told the truth about the way electricity is priced in this country, the lack of energy infrastructure, and also Great British Energy, which is essentially a huge, expensive white elephant. Let's take a break. After the break, we'll talk about private schools, shall we? Of course, because ideologically, the Labour Party's whacked VAT onto private schools. Apparently, middle-class parents across the nation are applauding this. They think this is a marvellous idea. Not those that I've spoken to. We'll be talking about that because actually, yet again, the Treasury predictions on this are woefully inaccurate. I'll be talking to Stephen James, who's an award-winning teacher, after this break. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Morning Glory, New Year's Day, 8:40, Wednesday, January the 1st. I'm David Bull. Thank you very much for your company. Hope you're well. Hope you had a great New Year as well. Well, this morning, the papers are full of it. The front page of the Times, our sister publication, poll gives Starmer a New Year headache. People describing the government in not exactly flattering terms, I think it's fair to say. They see Labour as incompetent, dishonest, unsuccessful. They think Starmer will fail on all 6 of his milestones. And of course today is an important day because, as the front page of the Daily Telegraph says, private schools to defy Treasury over fees. This is a really interesting story because Labour has said that essentially they're putting VAT on private schools because they're going to use all this money to fund new teachers. So they say they're going to recruit 6,500 extra teachers. But when you do the maths, by their own calculations, they're going to put in about 1.5 billion. That is nowhere near enough to pay for the number of teachers they say it will pay for, which is £5 billion. But also, just in terms of the Treasury analysis, they say that those private schools won't pass on 20% of the fees, the VAT, to the parents. They say it will be about 10%. Well, that is also incorrect. It is wrong. It is about 15 to 20%. So what we're seeing is that actually the parents are getting clobbered because of government policy. As a result of that, the parents are taking their kids out of school because they can't afford it. They're going into a state system where there aren't any school places. And so, again, this is a policy that is completely ill thought through. It is ideological only. It doesn't actually bring in any money of any note, and in fact, according to some studies, it is actually going to cost the government money. Joining me now, Stephen James, an award-winning teacher. Good morning to you.
Hello, good morning, David, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too. Where do you stand on this? The front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning, private schools to defy Treasury. Essentially, the government's got it wrong, their numbers are wrong again.
Yeah, I mean, this is, as you just said in your intro, completely ideologically driven, and, you know, they've taken into account, they're trying to sell the financial aspects of this, but they're not putting in place the educational and the societal aspects of this, which will impact us all. And it's an poorly thought through policy which they'd announced before the election, which they've rushed into being. And what you've outlined there with the numbers is just how it's ultimately going to cost us money rather than help us. And not just that, how it's going to affect us in classrooms as well, because what's going to happen is you've got private sector children being squeezed out of those independent schools and pushed into the state sector, which you've already pointed out is running at pretty much capacity. So you've then got, oversubscribed classes. You've then got children who are being forced out mid-year, disrupting their education. So you've really got to ask yourself, why do this now when there are other alternatives that could be explored? They could have gone to the sector. They could have asked the sector, right, how can we improve equity within education and come to conclusions that way?
It's vindictive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, just speaking from my own experience, I mean, I went to state schools all my life. I've taught in state schools, but one of the schools that I did teach at for a while was right opposite a private school. And I tell you what, we were allowed to use their facilities at any time, providing it fit in, and we were allowed to go use their running track, their swimming fields. They had experts on their staff. We could say, right, can you come and teach this history lesson for us? Because, we realise you've got someone with an amazing degree in this, and they can come and really inspire children. And all those sorts of things will shut down soon as these fees start clobbering those schools.
And that's a really good point because, of course, what the Labour government doesn't seem to understand is that private schools offer bursaries, scholarships, for many people from disadvantaged backgrounds. As the fees drop, as the pupil numbers disintegrate, those bursaries won't be available because they can't afford them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the children, ultimately, who are being punished in this. And, we've got to really reconsider if your goal, which I think is laudable, is to improve equity within education. I think that's a good goal. This way of going about it, which just irritates everybody and annoys everybody, is I don't know. I can't really. I'm trying to put myself in their place and the logic they've gone through to get to this point.
Well, there isn't any.
I can't see it.
Well, also, the other thing that they have completely woefully underestimated is the sheer numbers of pupils who will leave independent education. Now, they also seem to be labouring under this assumption that actually everyone who sends their kids to independent schools are phenomenally wealthy. That isn't the case. The majority of parents have 2, 3, 4 jobs. They have prioritised the children's education over going on sunny holidays or Sky TV or whatever it is to send their kids. So when you whop on 20% onto the top of that, which may be $6,000 or whatever per kid, that's unaffordable suddenly.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is, it's being seen as a punishment on aspirational parents, the ones who are literally giving up holidays, giving up upgrading their car and going without themselves so that their children can have a better chance than they had. And quite often, and I'll say this, I don't think you get a better education at a private school. What I do think is the fact that you've got parents who are willing to sacrifice in the household for you, for your education, is always going to give you a better starting life, because you've got parents who've got that mindset to go, do you know what, I'm going to improve your lot in life and it's going to be better than my lot in life. And what will happen when these parents are squeezed out of private schools is they will become places for the ultra-wealthy, the ones who 20%, it doesn't matter to them, and it will become even more exclusive, and the gap will widen even further.
Well, actually, what is going to happen is we're going to see a rise in overseas students, aren't we? And, of course, what we're doing is pricing out UK nationals from independent education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, down here in Folkestone, I live near a private school, and I see every day, back and forth, you hear the variety of languages that are going back and forth, and, the British children all mixed in with that, and they're getting great education because they're getting that international education with international students. But you're right, they're going to be squeezed out of this because they're local students and they're not going to get that opportunity anymore either.
We've already seen 5,500 children leave the independent sector going into the state system. That is not a figure that actually I think the Treasury thought would happen, but also, according to the latest studies, 40,000 children will leave independent education. And now the OBR is saying, rather than bringing in revenue to the Treasury, it's actually going to cost the government money, this policy.
Yeah, absolutely. So each student in state education costs about £8,000. So 40,000 children going in at £8,000 is going to absolutely hammer the state sector. And that's not to mention the ones who've got SEND as well, which cost a little bit more, something near £14,000. And there was a school that I visited just last year in North Kent, and it had a 40% intake on SEND children, because parents of children who had specific learning difficulties wanted to send their children to that private school because they had the specialist care for them. So 40% is a huge amount. And what they're doing is they're not them being a burden on the state sector in terms of extra resources, extra teachers, extra teaching assistants, and all those sorts of things. And even within that, a lot of those parents were being placed there by the local authority. So the local authority were paying those fees to enable those children to access those services and those specialist teachers. So will that cost get passed on to local government? Who knows?
Do you think the government listens to teachers?
Absolutely not. I mean, I've always thought that the sector itself has always been led probably more by the unions than by the profession as a whole. I think that they should have maybe a bit more of a Royal College of Teaching, which is based more on research, a bit more on promoting the value of the profession itself, and not getting political, just talking about the benefits for the children. I've always thought that, and I think the government would respect that a lot more, because it's not coming from a political point of view. So when it's Tory, when it's Labour, when it's maybe one day Reform, you never know.
Really nice to talk to you. Thank you, Stephen. I wish you a very happy new year as well. Stephen James, award-winning teacher, also co-founder of the Invicta National Academy, which was set up in 2020 as a result of COVID-19 to reconnect children with missed learning. Excuse me. Keep your messages coming in. Steve says, as I sit here at the start of 2025, I have but one hope, that somehow, some way, Starmer and his treacherous Labour government will fail before they completely will fall before they completely betray and destroy our country. Keep those messages coming in, 0344 499 1000. We'll take a break. We'll then talk to Cormac Smith, who's a former advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry, about the situation in Ukraine. Putin, also Donald Trump coming into power in just 19 days' time. That's all still to come. This is Morning Glory. Good morning and Happy New Year.
I think there is a conversation to be had around the impact of social media because, you know, we see it everywhere, don't we? It's just insidious. It's people on the trains playing music out loud because they think no one else can hear it. It's this idea that they're all walking around in a bubble, people walking down the street staring at a screen and unable to have a conversation or a debate or meet a stranger or, you know, and it's affecting people in the workplace. And as an economy, we do need people to be healthy, happy and well and working.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 8:53 on New Year's Day. Now, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has called for united support of his army in his annual New Year address without explicitly referring to the war he is waging in Ukraine. He hailed his soldiers heroes at the forefront of the fight for truth. He majored on this. He didn't mention Ukraine specifically, but obviously this is a pressing problem for Putin, particularly with Donald Trump coming into power in just 19 days' time. Joining me now, Cormac Smith, former advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. Good morning. Happy New Year to you, Cormac.
David, Happy New Year to you too. Nice to join you.
Well, and thanks ever so much for taking the time. I mean, this is going to be the year where I think we will see enormous movement in Ukraine. We have 19 days to go until Donald Trump comes into power. He says he will end this war on day one. What did you make of Putin's address? Because last year he delivered the address flanked by soldiers. There was great pomp and ceremony about it. He talked about sacrifice in the name of survival. Very different tone this year. On his own, in the Kremlin. Very little mention, if any, really explicitly, of Ukraine.
The first thing that came to mind, David, was a great book written by Peter Pomerantsev, a great Ukraine expert, a number of years ago called Nothing is True and Everything is Possible. It was a uncharacteristically short address, and as you quite rightly said, I noticed there was no specific mention of Ukraine. He talked about the achievements of the Russian people over the last 25 years, i.e. the first quarter of the 21st century, and he talked about how they had set themselves great goals and achieved them. Well, you know, in Ukraine, which he seems reluctant to mention, the goal was that Kyiv would fall within 72 hours, and some almost 3 years later, and approaching 800,000 Russian casualties and tens of thousands of pieces of kit lost, he is completely bogged down. He is certainly not winning this war in Ukraine.
And so what does it mean, Trump coming into power? Because Trump says he will end this conflict on day one. I think everyone knows that isn't the case. But I think Zelensky is keen to see some sort of deal. I think the last time I looked, they were talking about an 800-mile buffer zone between Ukraine and Russia. No one knows quite who would patrol that, possibly the European soldiers. The US would provide some sort of military aid to keep the peace, maybe some role for NATO as well. Is that what you envisage with Trump in power?
Well, look, it's beyond my ability to predict what Donald Trump, famously unpredictable and transactional, will do. But what I believe, David, is that there is a deal to be done with Trump. I'll say one thing. No, he will not end this war within 24 hours or anywhere close to that. But I do think, despite the fears that many have had, including myself, that Trump might simply throw Ukraine under the bus, I don't think that will necessarily happen. I think there is a deal to be done. Donald Trump has previously threatened to pull the US out of NATO, and the fear was that he would not only abandon Ukraine, but he would abandon all of us in the NATO European countries. I think there's a deal to be done. America will want to pivot towards the Middle and the Far East in particular. If Trump was to pull America out of Ukraine and Europe immediately, it would be probably impossible at the moment for the European nations to plug that gap. So we need to find a way to keep Trump in the game and engaged in Ukraine. And I think that is possible, but the price to pay will be that European NATO members will have to pay a lot more on defence. And I'll betray my own politics. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but if there's one area that I find myself in agreement with Trump, it's that European members of NATO have not been pulling their weight. Many are still under the minimum 2%. Britain, as you know, is at 2.3% and approaching 2.5%. I believe the price that Trump will pay would be to expect European NATO members to pay a minimum of 3%. Now, there are only 4 European nations at or above that. That will be the 3 Baltic nations and Poland, who are actually approaching 5% at the moment. The 2 new NATO members of Finland and Sweden, very, very strong members who have strengthened NATO considerably, are at about 2.5%. So we wait to see, But as I say, I believe there's a deal to be done.
Cormac, really good to talk to you. I wish you a very happy new year. Cormac Smith, their former advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. We'll take a break. After the break, we're going to be talking about the latest political machinations.
Short and sweet, was that okay?
I'm going to be talking to Baroness Claire Fox, independent peer. I'll be talking about the bad polling for Keir Starmer. What does that mean as he comes into the new year? Of course, the arguments over the VAT on the private schools, also the energy price cap going up. Not exactly a great start for Keir Starmer.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, Oivamo slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Happy New Year. It is just after 9 o'clock on the 1st of January, the first day of 2025. Thanks ever so much for your company. How was last night? How do you feel today? Are you full of joy and optimism? Do you think the country is now going to be a better place? Is the government in control of events? Are you optimistic about the future of the United Kingdom? Well, let me start your new year with a dampener because more than 36,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel. That is in 2024, up 25% on 2023. You'll remember, of course, that Keir Starmer said he would smash the gangs. Well, he hasn't done that, has he? 36,816 migrants crossed the English Channel to the UK in 2024. These are provisional figures. That is up 25% on 2023. So that is a bit of bad news to begin the new year. Also, talking of bad news, here's the front page of the Times this morning. This is a poll giving Starmer a New Year headache. Now, Keir Starmer, in his address, his New Year address to the nation, he talks about many people in Britain finding it hard to think about the future, that things are tough for the British people. And yet, when you ask voters what they think of Labour Labour and the Labour leader. Most voters see Labour as incompetent, dishonest and unsuccessful, and they think Starmer will fail on all 6 of the milestones he set for his government. That is according to polling for a YouGov, which was for the Times actually done by YouGov. Now, when you actually ask the population, what do you think about the optimistic outlook for this country, only 31% of voters said they are optimistic about the year ahead. What's worse, only 21% of people actually say they trust Labour most on the economy. So that's a big wake-up call to the Prime Minister. The Daily Telegraph this morning talking about private schools, saying once again the Treasury has got all their figures wrong, that actually the schools are passing on those the increase in VAT to parents. And of course, as we were talking about earlier, that we are seeing children being dragged out mid-school year of independent schools going into the state system where there aren't the places for them. And then, of course, just to add insult to injury, the front page of the Daily Mail, so much for cutting our energy bills. This is Ed Miliband saying energy bills are going to come down by 300 quid. Well, guess what? They're not. They're going up. And that is because the energy price cap is going up. Angela Knight was saying the government is not being honest with the people. And that was a very strong message that she imparted just a few minutes ago on this very show. Well, joining me now is Baroness Claire Fox, independent peer, director of the Academy of Ideas. Good morning. Happy New Year, Claire.
Same to you, David.
Really nice to see you. Can we start with the sense of optimism or lack of it for the new year? Of course, Keir Starmer has done a big interview with the Mirror this morning, talking about his promise for 2025. There's the front page of the Mirror. He talks about how this is going to be the year of a national revival, that the country will come together. Just before I ask for your thoughts on that, let's just take a look at his New Year message to the nation.
Till you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you. A fight for change that will define this year, next year, and indeed every waking hour of this government. We have a clear plan for change. 1.5 million new homes, restoring the dream of home ownership. Children starting school ready to learn. A more secure energy system, waiting lists cut dramatically, immigration reduced, neighbourhood police tackling antisocial behaviour in every community, and more cash in your pocket wherever you live.
Plan for change, working people, energy, robotic, automated, badly framed, lacklustre, not wearing the right clothes, not statesmanlike, pretty shocking.
Oh, Jack, tell us what you really think, David. I think the problem with the way that Starmer framed that was he didn't acknowledge at all the deeper mood, which is, you've said all this before, only 6 months ago. You won an election and people were quite hopeful that a new government would mean something substantial changing. And the sense of absolute profound disappointment that's taken hold amongst Labour enthusiasts, that's what's most shocking, not just sort of like casual Labour voters, but a lot of people who are around the Labour Party can't get over how bad they are. So I think we do have a sense of pessimism moving into the new year about what the government's likely to do. And if you want a sense of discontent, I don't think it's kind of like that absolute slumping, kind of pessimism, because I think that people feel, well, it really is time for change, as Starmer says, but it won't be with him. And I do think people feel as though politics is going to, for once, change for good in the next, maybe not next year, but in the next few years. Things are going to happen that are going to really have a profound impact on the way we see politics in this country.
I mean, you're a seasoned politician. Just if you were to mark them out of 10 in terms of the policies they unveiled and sort of the chronology of what they did. The winter fuel allowance being scrapped, that was an own goal, if you ask me. Then, of course, they've put VAT on private schools. That smacks of ideology over, actually, the economics that were involved in that. Now we're seeing, of course, this obsession with net zero. Ed Miliband saying the bills are going to get cheaper. They're not. They're going up. Angela Knight saying, actually, the politicians are lying to the public.
I mean, there's quite a wide range of things. I mean, you've left out, because you would have to leave out, because there's been an awful lot of them. You've left out the absolutely unconscionable attack on working farmers.
Yes, well said.
And the fact that one of the first things that Bridget Phillipson did as the Education Secretary was to scrap the Higher Education Free Speech Bill, which bodes badly. A bill which, by the way, had become an act of Parliament. It had gone through, been approved by the monarch, everything. A week before it was just about to come in, they got rid of it, showing a contempt for the democratic process and contempt for free speech. And I think we've also forgotten, or not forgotten, but worth noting, the Stockport riots. And something profound happened very early on in that Labour administration, which was terrible civil unrest, very scary if you were watching it. And, you know, I don't want to sugarcoat it. There were times when you felt that some people on the streets were indeed racist, that there was kind of race riots happening, that things are out of control. But nonetheless, expressing a deep and profound sense of alienation that many people feel at the moment about not being told what's going on, two-tier policing and so on. And what's the response of Keir Starmer? To basically threaten to lock up anyone who has posted the wrong things on social media and call everyone far right. And that tone deafness, I think, is what we've seen, because you listed a number of things which we might well be very worried about in terms of energy, the private schools, national insurance contributions going to have a profound impact on jobs. All of these things, it's more that you get a sense of the overall package of Labour is vindictive in a way, a rather chippy, vindictive attack on what they think will be populist targets, like private schools, like big rich landowners, like rich pensioners, all this sort of thing. And they get it wrong every time.
They do.
But also a really draconian, authoritarian feel underneath it all, that they're going to really persecute you if you say the wrong thing and if you don't go along with them.
Has that been, I suppose, in some senses, the most powerful sign being sent by the government? The fact that it's been curtailing free speech, expression of thought?
I think that's a very worrying prospect for 2025 that we all need to be on our guard against. And just that sort of sense that if you're not with them, that they're going to demonize you and effectively set you up as bigots. And that's very worrying. We know that there's already talk about potentially bringing in an increase in hate crime legislation, particularly around Islamophobia. And we all know that that will have a very negative impact on our ability to discuss, on the one hand, the immigration issue, on the other hand, the issues around security and fear of the rise of radical Islam and Islamism rather than the religion itself. And we won't be able to make the distinction between ordinary Muslim people who live in the UK and the fears that we have about a radical version of that and the absolute scary nature of the nihilistic jihadis support that we know happens in this country, let alone worldwide. And they're talking about bringing in a law that will clamp down on Islamophobia, which will mean that you can't talk about it. Very dangerous times. But also, the fact that they've scrapped this new act from the university campuses implies that anyone who goes on about cancel culture is just a culture wars warrior. Well, you ask students and academics at the moment whether the atmosphere on campus is one of open, intellectual endeavour where you can ask difficult questions and so on and so forth. Certainly not.
No.
It's as vicious there as it's ever been, and the Labour government are just indifferent to it. They don't care.
Let's look at Kemi Badenoch's speech, shall we? This is her message to the British people at the time of New Year.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch.
Claire, nothing about the country, all about the Conservative Party.
But it had the merit of being quite short, David.
Yes, that's also true.
I thought that I wouldn't write off Kemi Badenoch yet. I mean, she's made absolutely no impact as the leader so far, so I don't want to be but I do think that there is an attempt by Kemi Badenoch to do something different with the Conservatives and not just kind of same old, same old. So we'll see what she comes up with.
Okay.
But my general view is that the mainstream political parties are imploding before our eyes, and they won't survive this in the same way that they did. It's a new era.
I think that is absolutely spot on. Now, let's talk about Reform UK. Nigel Farage, he chose a very different location. He chose Blenheim Palace, the birthplace of Winston Churchill. You and I both know that Nigel Farage has a very keen interest in history and Britain's place in the world. Let's take a look at his New Year's speech.
Fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of. It was also because I'd fought so hard and so long for us to get back our independence, Brexit, taking back control of our own lives, and to see that completely squandered by a Conservative Party who frankly never believed in it, but used it for electoral advantage in 2019.
Claire, your thoughts?
I think Nigel Farage is, I thought it was a very well-toned, good New Year message, actually. I don't always agree with everything that Nigel says, but I really thought this was spot on. One thing that he just struck a chord on there was that very important recognition of the importance of having some sense of pride in one's country and in one's history and in one's tradition. And that the reason why I mentioned that was because in Keir Starmer's speech, he said, oh, we're proud of the past as well. We're going to have these big celebrations for VED Day and VJ Day. And the reason why I don't believe a word of that, by the way, is that at the same time, they've just announced a major curriculum review of what's taught in schools, with Bridget Phillipson saying she's going to decolonise all the different, that they're going to be made reflective of diversity and brought up to date. And you just know that's the whole decolonisation project. So Nigel Farage was much more sober about saying, no, we really have to take some pride in our history if we're going to move forward in the future. I, of course, liked his message of take back control, because I think that aspiration to be in control of your own destiny and to control your laws and borders and so on has never been fulfilled. And yet that desire is never been, is as strong as ever. And I think that's what both Labour and the Conservatives have not been able to fulfil. I don't know whether Reform can do it, but I'll tell you what, everybody I know, regardless of what they think of Farage, are saying they'll consider Reform, voting for Reform. They've got a sense of dynamism around them that, not necessarily because of the Great Manifesto, but they represent that new populist surge that says, we want to take control, we want a different kind of politics, and good luck with that. I mean, what's not to like about that? That's a very optimistic thought for the future, I think.
Well, of course, Claire, last night was New Year's Eve. Fortunately, the celebrations in London did go ahead. I feel very sorry for those in Edinburgh. Of course, they had to cancel due to the inclement weather. But just in terms of London, Sadiq Khan, not exactly the most popular person in the world. He got his gong. Actually, Theo earlier on was saying that now Sadiq Khan has got his gong, that may be game over. He won't stand again to be London Mayor. Let's see. I don't know whether he's got his eye on the top job. We shall see. Time will tell. However, despite the amazing fireworks, Sadiq Khan couldn't stop himself, could he? He had to put a political message in there, using Things Can Only Get Better from 1997, the Labour theme. Let's just take a look at a few snapshots of the celebrations in London.
when skies are grey, hope is the way. In London, everyone is different. But that means anyone can fit in. I think she must be right, because although I don't look like anyone else, I really do feel at home. Happy New Year. Love from Paddington.
What did you think? Soppy? Was it inclusive? Was it political?
It's crass and it's insulting. I mean, you know, bring out the beloved Paddington because he's a refugee.
Exactly.
And he's like a person of difference, and therefore we've all got to love each other. And what's most insulting is in multi-ethnic London, many people of many ethnicities do live happily side by side. And those people of many ethnicities also can be united in being absolutely furious about illegal small boats crossings, right? That's not, you don't have to be like, oh, the only people who think like that are white British. But actually, it's across the board. People who are legal migrants hate the fact that there's an illegal influx of people. And it also misses a very important point, which is the notion of culturally, people worry about people who are coming to live in the UK and who despise and hate the UK, and worry about domestic intelligentsia, people who run the universities, run the think tanks, run all the quangos, who also hate the UK. So this idea of peace and harmony, it could well start with those people who run society. Stop slagging off the country that we live in, and stop slagging off, by the way, the electorate, because the implication of that fireworks message was you're the problem because you don't love everyone and you don't appreciate difference. And you just think, you know, all of the revelations that we've had in the last few weeks, particularly about the grooming gangs, the disgusting way that they were ignored, things that happened in the north of England. What am I supposed to say in multicultural language? Oh, I love the difference of the grooming gangs. What an interesting cultural take they have on the world. We love everybody. It's absolutely insulting to us all to tell us we must go along with that. Just by the way, Edinburgh, what a disgrace. That's a bad start to the new year. The inclement weather meant they called off the...
Well, it's health and safety, Claire. It's health and safety.
A little bit of drizzle. Loads of people called off the fireworks that families had looked forward to for ages on the basis that it might be a bit wet.
Well, no, but also people had flown in from all over the world to be there as well. And what do? They then couldn't do anything because everything was sold out.
And it doesn't make you feel that the United Kingdom are really sort of raring to go in the new year.
No.
If the first thing they do is to cancel a celebration that families are looking forward to because they think it might be a bit uncomfortable and because they're too risk-averse and scared. So I say, you know, the authorities are the risk-averse and scared ones, and the rest of us have got to have a bit of courage in 2025.
Well,
take hold, take back control, that's what I say.
Very good, Claire. Excellent, touche. Baroness Claire Fox, very happy New Year to you. Really good to see you, Claire. Baroness Claire Fox, their independent peer in the House of Lords. Keep your messages coming in, please. Happy New Year to Baroness Claire Fox. You got it spot on, Claire. So from one Claire to another, keep the freedom of truth and the freedom of speech and freedom of expression going. That is, of course, from Claire. I wish you a very happy New Year as well. Lots of you getting in touch about those immigration numbers. This is Carlos in Cheshire. 36,816 illegal immigrants in 2024 is scandalous. At an average of 100 people breaking into our country every single day last year, the situation is becoming desperate, and desperate measures are therefore needed to address the matter. Start with Border Force or the Navy. Tow back every boat to France. If you do that for a few weeks, it will soon stem the flow. Keep all those messages coming in, please. We're going to talk about the NHS after the break because more than 1 million sick patients, that's about 1 in 20 who tried, couldn't get through to their GP last month. Also, we know there are huge problems in hospitals. We saw major incidents being declared, I think, in 2 hospitals yesterday. And multiple NHS services simply can't cope already. And this is the beginning, really, of the cold weather, of the wintry seasonal weather. And, of course, that means the NHS is pretty much on its knees. Roy Lilly will join me after this break. He's a former NHS Trust chairman. Don't go anywhere. This is Morning Glory. Happy New Year.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 9:27, New Year's Day. A very happy New Year to you. I'm David Bull. The time, 9:27. Yes. I hope you're feeling very well. I hope you had a good night last night. I wonder how your heads is this morning. Claire Fox was saying how pathetic it was that the celebrations in Scotland last night were cancelled due to a bit of drizzle. I think that's a bit harsh. But this message says, this is Stuart, who's 55, lived in Edinburgh all his life. Good morning. Happy New Year to you. The weather in Edinburgh last night was absolutely fine. Whoa, the reason for the cancellation is that Edinburgh is run by a woke council, so Claire was right. Keep those messages coming in. I'm delighted, actually, that the celebrations here in London did go ahead, although I did spot this political message. Of course, Sadiq really can't stop himself, can he? So he used the 1997 Labour anthem, Things Can Only Get Better, and then, as I was talking to Claire about, then they had to enrol Paddington Bear, who is a migrant, into the country, to basically push the message that all migrants are welcome in London, and there was definitely some sort of political message being shown to people. However, on balance, the fireworks were absolutely amazing as London welcomed in the new year. Keep all those messages coming in. Tony says, hi, David, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you as well. Two-tier Keir is hated by his own voters. Never mind the 80% who didn't vote for him. That's interesting. Also, I wonder, and I said this yesterday, how long has he got? Many people are saying 2 years. I'm not even sure it's that long, because I think the Labour Party can see they're in serious trouble. If you look on New Year's Day, this should really be the time where Keir Starmer sets out his stall for the year ahead. So the Mirror says, my promise for 2025, when you open it up and read the copy, it's blah, 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 blah. And then the Daily Telegraph is talking about this absolutely vindictive policy of adding VAT to private school fees. Private schools to defy Treasury, i.e. the Treasury got that wrong. The Daily Mail this morning, so much for cutting our energy bills. The energy price cap is going up. Ed Miliband has got this obsession with net zero. Earlier on, we were talking about this. Angela Knight said that the government is lying to the public, essentially not telling the public the truth, and we could have much cheaper energy if we stop splurging the cash, I'm paraphrasing, on the green initiatives. But again, as I keep saying, we haven't had a referendum on any of that. Lots of other messages. Greg in Edinburgh, good morning. How does Claire Fox think everything is set up for the events in Edinburgh? Was she volunteering to put the scaffolding up in 40-mile-an-hour winds? A fairy doesn't just click their fingers on the 31st and it's all set up. OK, so a very different feeling there as well. Oh, this is interesting. David, January is the month many Conservative Party memberships renew. Ooh, 131,000 currently. The Reform Party membership has gone up, but some of those people may already be Conservative Party members. It's the number of Conservative renewals that will be interesting. Certainly will be. Right, let's talk about the health service. This is in the Daily Mail this morning. More than 1 million sick patients. This is 1 in 20 who tried were unable to contact their GP in the last month, according to research. This is ONS data. This is in just 1 month. 4.8 million people who tried to contact the GP couldn't actually get through on the same day. 2.2 million then had to wait several days to make contact. 1.1 million couldn't get through at all in the month. For a whole month couldn't get through. And then when they actually got through and they got an appointment, fewer than half actually received a face-to-face visit. And then 100,000 patients were told to deal with it themselves. Not exactly a great endorsement of the health service. On the back of that, of course, yesterday we declared, I announced there were 2 major incidents that had been declared. Hospitals around the UK struggling with this, what they're calling the quademic of flu, COVID-19, RSV, norovirus, and we're really only at the beginning of a cold winter. Joining me now is Roy Lilly, former NHS Trust Chairman. This makes very salutary reading for a New Year's Day. Good morning and Happy New Year, Roy.
David, good morning. Happy New Year to you. No, it's not really what I want to be talking about on New Year's Day. You hope for something a bit more uplifting, don't you? Look, I mean, I don't want to be tedious about this, but I'm not quite sure that the interpretation of those numbers is absolutely right.
Are we talking about the GPs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this has come from the Lib Dems, so obviously there is a political onus for this.
Yeah, they've done a couple of these kind of things over Christmas and the New Year, and when you start unpacking it, it's not quite what the headline seems. This is the ONS that do a self-reporting customer survey or user survey. They do it regularly, and whether it means that people rang on the first occasion that they couldn't get through, and then the sort of numbers are teased apart. And the other interesting thing for me is that, in fairness to the NHS, they invested a lot of money in something called cloud telephony. They knew that some of the GP's telephone systems were pretty old and ropey, and that there were two things really. Firstly, that the GPs couldn't really afford to upgrade it, and secondly, a lot of them were on contracts that they couldn't get out of with existing providers. So the NHS provided them with a new cloud telephony option, which does allow you to leave a message. It does do automatic callbacks. The calls do get racked instead of just not getting through. And a lot of GPs took advantage of that. And a lot of the calling systems are a lot better, in fairness to that. But, as I said a moment or two ago, a lot of the systems are privately provided, these switchboard systems, and they're in contracts like 3-5 years that they can't get out of. So I think probably some of the systems that are still in existence just can't cope with the demand.
And of course what we're desperate for is some sort of plan from the Labour government. Now we know the Darcy report, we know what it said. Also Wes Streeting says he's going to come out with a plan for the NHS. I mean, just thinking back to what he said, they want to move away from secondary care into primary care, into prevention. Yeah, OK, sounds great. I'm not sure quite how you do that. But also at the same time, you've got to sort out social care, because if you don't sort that out, you can't get people out of hospital.
No, David, you're right. And we're getting into the territory of what in management speak is called the capacity paradox, where if you add capacity, it fills up and puts pressure elsewhere. So if it takes a long time to get an ambulance, you buy more ambulances.
But doesn't that show there's need?
There is, but the point I'm coming to is if you keep adding capacity, like people waiting for beds, say you add more beds, that kind of thing, you have to get to the point where you have to deal with the root cause of this, and you have to deal with the major demand. Now, the major demand for going into A&E, which is really what everyone's talking about, are elderly people and kids under 5. Those are the two big users. Now, kids under 5 is fairly simple to sort out if you've got health visitors and you've got good support for families, which we don't have. The elderly, you will know from your own time in the NHS, there are frailty indexes. We know exactly who's likely to end up needing help, but we can't help them because we don't have enough social care and we don't have enough community nurses. So if we're going to solve this, if Streeting is going to solve this in some way or other, he's got to deal with the capacity paradox and say, okay, let's stop people having to use the service in the first place. It's not cheap, but it's a lot more expensive when they get in hospital and you can't get them home. So I'm hoping when we see that, and the other annoying thing about this is there's a perfectly robust and well-worked NHS long-term plan which addresses all this. I mean, it does need investment, and you can't buy a box of nurses, from Amazon. It takes time to train people, but I mean, there is a plan to resolve all this by parking what we're doing. To be honest, it looks to me like they're kind of kicking the NHS in the long grass because they don't have any money to invest in it. And it's very convenient to say, oh, we've got big brains working on this until the spring, and then we'll have a plan, and then we'll consult on it, and then it's a 10-year plan. I mean, if it involves money, then you've got to work it in with a financial cycle, which is March to April. You're looking at if a plan that's going to be put into action is 2.5, maybe 3 years away. So, I mean, there's a huge amount to be getting on with now. And as you say, none of the politicians want to go anywhere near social services because nobody knows really how to resolve it. There are things that you can do. I mean, in Germany, I've found a very interesting thing going on in Germany where families are actually paid to look after their elderly relatives.
Yeah.
They're given training. They're given days off. They just work, and their job is to look after their granny. I think that's a great idea.
So do I. So do I. And actually, Roy, just in terms of that, it's not just the physical support, it's the emotional support that you can give an older relative because they're living with you and therefore they don't have the social isolation. It's kind of those kind of ideas are exactly what we should be looking at. I'm afraid time is tight, but I wish you a very happy New Year and thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Thanks ever so much for coming on this morning. Roy Lilly, former NHS Trust Chairman. We'll take a break. After the break, I'm going to be talking about the polling for Starmer. Really bad news. Lord Robert Hayward, Tory peer, pollster and political analyst will join me after this break. Good morning. Happy New Year.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9:40 on Wednesday, January the 1st, a new year, New Year's resolution. Of course, Keir Starmer, I think it's fair to say, hasn't exactly had the best start to his premiership. He, in his message, and this is in the Mirror today, he basically has given an interview to the Mirror saying this is the year of change. He likes that word, doesn't he? It's the year of change. We're going to come together. We're going to build a better Britain, and so on. This is what he is saying. He says many in Britain find it hard to think about the future. Yeah, because life is very tough. He talks about it's a year of rebuilding, prosperity, repairing the public services, and actually repairing his own poll ratings. Well, when you look at the research that's been done, this is YouGov for The Times, and you ask voters what they think of Labour, they say Labour is incompetent, dishonest, unsuccessful. Starmer will fail at all 6 of the milestones. And when you actually dig down into this, only 31% of voters are optimistic about the year ahead. Just 12% of voters say Labour has been successful. Just 12%. So he has a lot of catching up to do. There's more bad news for him as well, because there is more research out. Lord Robert Hayward, Tory peer pollster and political analyst, joins me now. Good morning. Happy New Year, Robert.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you, David.
Now, you have conducted some very interesting research. What have you found?
Yeah, it's sad what some people do during their Christmas.
Well, I was going to say that, actually.
I spent too much time looking at a very large number of council by-elections across the country. There are by-elections for councils every week, but because large numbers of Labour MPs were previously councillors, there have been a quite extraordinary number over the last few months. And what the analysis shows is that initially, after the general election, the voters were willing to give the Labour Party the benefit of the doubt. What has appeared through October into November, and particularly post the budget, is that the disenchantment with Labour has been accelerating. So even in safe Labour wards, and we're talking right across the country, from North East Scotland right down to Somerset, in safe Labour wards, the Labour vote share has been dropping quite surprisingly and increasingly rapidly. And that clearly must be a worry for the Labour Party.
Well, it must, of course, and then, of course, this continues. We've also got other elections. There's also this prospect of government reorganisation. So how is it looking going forward? Also, I've got an eye on Wales as well. I think Wales is going to be very interesting.
Well, Wales comes up a while yet.
Yes.
We've got the local government elections in May, the normal ones that occur in some parts of the country. And that will be the next big hurdle for all the political parties. And they will have their eyes over the next few months on preparing for that. At the moment, it's always dangerous to say, if this happens now, then that will happen in a few months' time, because events, dear boy, events. But at the moment, the Labour Party prospects, as you identified in the opinion polls, and particularly in these by-elections, Labour people are just not turning out. The turnouts in council by-elections are low, but the turnout amongst Labour supporters has been staggeringly low.
So just finally, if I may, what would you say to Starmer? You know, you're a man who's been around the block, you know politics. What would you say to him if you were sitting down one-to-one saying, this is going really badly, this is what you need to do? What is that thing?
Get your plans implemented so that people actually believe what you're saying. At the moment, people perceive it as aspirations which are not being implemented. So the public have to see, whether it's in NHS or education or immigration, they've got to feel that this government is doing something rather than talking about it.
Lord Robert Hayward, I wish you a very happy new year. Really good to talk to you. Lord Robert Hayward there, Tory peer, pollster and political analyst. We'll take a break. After the break, something a little lighter. Steve Denyer, Virgin Radio presenter, will be joining me. Of course he is. It's New Year's Day. The time 9:45 on Wednesday, January the 1st.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Final part of Morning Glory this morning on the first day of 2025. A very happy new year to you all. 9:48 on Wednesday, January the 1st. So I was thinking for this final part, who should I invite in? Well, there is only one man who could fill that position, and that is, of course, showbiz Steve Denyer. Good morning.
Dr. David. How you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Now, I got you a treat, actually, because I went shopping yesterday, and I thought we should celebrate the new year with something sparkly, because
this lovely.
You were working last night.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so I didn't get home to gone 2
this morning.
2 this morning, and then there was it was
Have you been to bed?
Loud. I think I got about 2 hours sleep. Every time I drifted off, a car had crashed into a lamppost outside my place. There was just the sound of glass shattering and people. I sound really miserable, don't I? But it wasn't a great sleep. But here we are.
Well, no. So the funny thing is, on the way here, so the car arrived, and I thought, it was mobs. So this is at, what, 4:40 this morning, the car arrived. It was absolutely mobbed. There were people with eyes looking in different directions. They couldn't seem to understand this thing called a road. And then people waiting at bus stops in totally inappropriate outfits, and I loved every moment of it. It was marvellous. Anyway, I wish you a very happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
This is not champagne, actually. This is not that French nonsense. It's English sparkling wine.
Okay. Yes. And it's called...
I bought it. I mean, I feel they should send me one if I. This is Chapel Down, actually.
Oh, very nice.
Is
very
it right?
nice. First drink of the new year.
Oh, me too. It's actually very nice,
isn't it? Very nice.
Yeah. I can see them all very excited.
So I gather you were in bed at midnight last night, were you? You went to bed before midnight.
I believe I was. Yeah. Wasn't I?
So you missed... Well, I just wanted to run a few things down. It's quite interesting. I do love New Year's Eve. I love all the different kind of bits of celebrations. I was on air on Virgin Radio when the fireworks went off. Interesting, the fireworks were great. No drones, which I quite like the mixture of fireworks and drones.
I mean, I watched some other countries and they used drones, didn't they? I think some of the Far Eastern countries actually used them.
What I would pick up, and it was very impressive, and I did like, some of the themes and stuff, but you couldn't hear the music because the fireworks were so loud.
What, in London?
In London.
Couldn't you?
So, usually they kind of mix this soundtrack, and the soundtrack moves, so it's all computerised, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fireworks move with the sound and stuff. The sound got completely drowned out, from what I could tell. But we get to...
I'm going to watch it later.
We're at the top of the tower here at the news building. We get a great vantage point. So you almost get to see... You get to see the audience's vantage point of the fireworks. It's quite incredible.
Actually, this would have been a great place to come,
It's the best kept secret.
Could have sold tickets.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, we'll do that next year.
Sophie Ellis-Bextor getting sick. So she did...
so where was she?
So she was doing a BBC One show. It was live on BBC One last night. But lots of people saying that she was out of breath and struggling to keep up with her own songs. I mean, poor girl. It was an hour long. She had people like Jake Shears and different people coming on. I just don't think these kind of shows work that well, on a New Year's Eve. I think a New Year's Eve has always been, for me, like a variety thing. So Graham Norton's chat show works really well. When they're sitting around chatting and they've got champagne.
And having champagne and
it's a bit more relaxed. Obviously, Jules Holland is the master of the New Year's Eve show.
So the one thing I would say to you is that for those people, and there are lots of people who, whether they're older or they've got young kids or whatever, they do stay at home and they want to stay up and celebrate the New Year. And it's really important that you have some sort of entertainment show that appeals to the entire family. And I'm just thinking about that. Your point is really valid. But also people like Michael Bublé, for example, that's a really good example of a great artist that I think brings in all the generations.
Yeah, exactly. And no one has any problems. It's great music and it appeals to different generations 100%. And that kind of thing. Interesting in the States, when I did get home last night, I watched, Anderson Cooper's New Year's Eve party thing that he does every year with Andy Cohen.
Well, I don't.
They do this thing, and it's quite controversial, where they drink shots on the hour. So Andy Cohen gets more and more outrageous with what he's saying, but there was a really awkward moment where he's slating the New York mayor and saying, thank goodness he's not around, but the mayor was actually in the background waiting to come on and press the button, because obviously the ball drops in Times Square, doesn't it? Have you ever been there for that? in New York. It's quite a thing.
No, but I have been in Vegas.
It's interesting you say Vegas and the Strip last night. Now, this happened just 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I saw it.
It was all about New Year's Eve in Vegas. Is all about the artists that the hotels book to play. That's where the money is. So you had a band, Imagine Dragons, that we play on Virgin Radio. Bruno Mars was on the Strip last night.
Really?
And the most amazing firework display. And for the first time ever, they showed the fireworks in the Sphere. You know this makeshift Sphere where U2 performed?
Yes.
Where it's got something like 50,000 LED screens.
Yeah.
And apparently it was kind of all immersive and it felt like you were within the fireworks. So
amazing.
No one does it like Vegas.
No,
Incredible
although
stuff.
I have to say hats off to Australia. I mean, that was an amazing display. Of course, they were one of the first. New Zealand, I thought was good as well. I've only seen clips of London, but I mean, I have to say, when we bother to do things, we do things well.
Yes, and I think that we probably... I mean, Paris was very good as well. Paris was really good. I'm going to have another sip of champagne here.
Well, it's English sparkling wine, I'll have you know.
Thank you very much.
This is taking back control, you know.
The Australia thing I thought was weird because they had Robbie Williams performing there, literally just before the fireworks.
Yes,
but due to rights, they couldn't show it.
But that was the weirdest
no one
thing.
could see it.
No, exactly. So I had that feed on and I could hear Robbie Williams in the background, but you couldn't actually hear it. And then you just got a still shot. The whole thing was very odd.
Very, very odd. So you saw 5 seconds of Robbie Williams, but the sound was drowned out. But they did it very well. I wondered if we could just look ahead. We're in a brand new year. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Great things rumbling on that are just coming out. So, first of all, Madonna. We like chatting about Madonna.
Well, so she's in the paper this morning. I can't remember which one. She looks pretty... I mean, I know she's, you know, how do I put this nicely? Been, you know, seen a surgeon or two, but she looks pretty good.
Yeah, she does.
How old is she?
She's 65 years old.
Yeah, she
I
looks
think
good.
from what I hear, because I know people who know her and her
do
fan
you?
club people, I think that health scare that she had a year and a half ago really kind of sorted her out, and she kind of thought, I need to stop with, you know, there were rumours about implants that had burst and stuff like that, and I think she's just gone kind of back to basics now.
She looks good.
She looks all right, doesn't she? On Sky, it's very rare you get documentaries about Madonna, but this is a really good one. It's called Becoming Madonna, and it's an hour and 45 minutes. Ooh. Everyone's talking about it. May I play you just a little bit of the trailer?
Yes.
How Madonna became the Queen of Pop. Have a look at this.
Lovely.
I don't think that Madonna ever did what she was told.
She said, I want to rule the world.
She was ruthless, in a good way. I mean, look what it got her.
So that's really interesting because the only one I remember is In Bed with Madonna, which was in, what, 1987? Or
1990 that
was
came
it,
out. That was a movie about, it was kind of like a fly on the wall. First of its kind, actually, a fly on the wall documentary about the Blonde Ambition tour.
Well, that's right, and Blonde Ambition, you and I have spoken about this before, but I went to that very tour. I had never seen anything like it.
Yes.
And the way that she went from like a virgin into like a prayer, and the staging theatrics, and she was really, I imagine she was kind of a trailblazer of that.
Absolutely.
Staging.
This is very much what you get, that she was one of a kind and she set the tone for everybody since. Nobody else did a rock concert like that. It was either a rock concert or, you know, like a pop show, but never a stage appearance.
No.
And what is blindingly obvious is she always had that drive. In this documentary, it's all kind of archived material and interviews and stuff. Really good stuff, sewn together. And what you don't realise is she really had to fight to get noticed to begin with. People were like, you're just a dancer. She arrived in New York City with $30.
Amazing.
She was turned down by her first manager. It was actually Michael Jackson's manager who took her on. Excuse me, I'm burping after the English wine. It was...
very expensive English wine, I'll have you know.
It's a great watch.
And
can
we just move on? Time is tight. The front page of The Sun, there's Claudia Winkleman and The Traitors.
Yes. Now, this is going to be bigger than ever. The Traitors.
Never
this is
seen
season 3. Can I play you a little bit? Let's have a look. Claudia Winkleman.
New Year. A chance to decide who you're going to be. Kinder. More honest. Or a cunning game player who will deceive their way to the top. Hello! Team Traitor.
We've tasted blood for the first time.
Or Team Faithful.
We need to find the traitor.
New year, whole new game.
So, Traitors.
Yes.
Should I watch it?
Well, look, I haven't really watched the last couple of seasons, but I'm determined to watch this one because this is supposed to be, like, they've really mastered it. And the thing is, the contestants now know what's expected of them, but apparently within the first half an hour of tonight's episode, the first episode at 8 o'clock, is the most nail-biting sequence.
BBC One?
BBC One, yeah. They're putting the first 2 on the iPlayer straight away from 8 tonight, and I think the third comes out tomorrow. But it is the show that everybody's talking about. Somebody's stolen my champagne. Happy New Year.
I know, it's not. I come in and it gets into my paw because he can't handle it. He got windy, didn't he?
He's had 2 hours.
Claudia Wonkelman.
Yeah.
I mean...
I got a bit burpy, didn't you? Do you need your back rub?
Thank you.
Okay?
She will forever be known as Claudia Wonkelman. That's a result. So you know you can't drink